Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a time when streets echoed with sandal slaps on stone, incense curled lazily from crowded temples, and a public urinal doubled as your neighbor's gossip corner. You're stepping into the Roman Empire, wide-eyed, underdressed, and seconds away from regret. You've just arrived, somehow. One moment you were curled up in your modern bed, the next, bam! You're in the middle of a bustling Roman forum, blinking against the blinding Mediterranean sun. Your first thought? Wow, it's hot. Your second? Why does everyone look so sweaty and angry? Your t-shirt draws stares. Your jeans confuse everyone, and the phone in your hand? It's already missing, lifted by a street kid who's probably halfway to melting it down for scrap. A burly man in a tunic shouts something about your ridiculous feet coverings, which you realize are Crocs. Yes, your downfall has begun. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I also love knowing where and when you're watching from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the center of Roman civilization, specifically a sprawling public space choked with merchants, animals, guards, and something wet you don't want to look down at. There's shouting, always shouting. The language is Latin, but fast and peppered with slang. You catch a few words: praetor, forum, and unfortunately, barbarus. It's being directed at you. You stumble forward, trying to blend in. Not easy, considering you're taller than most and clearly radiating not from here energy. The ground is paved in uneven stone, and there's a suspicious slime running in the gutter. A cart piled with amphorae nearly clips you. Turns out Romans have traffic, and no one yields to pedestrians. Historically speaking, the forum is where deals are struck, politics argued, lawsuits launched, and sometimes executions held. Right now, it smells like overripe olives, wet dog, and hot bronze. You wrinkle your nose. Someone notices and frowns. Sensory complaints are not a vibe here. To your left, a woman in a stola is berating a man over figs. To your right, a senator's litter passes, borne by sweating slaves who look dangerously close to quitting. You accidentally make eye contact with one and give a sympathetic nod. He trips. You are blamed. Here's your first big lesson. In ancient Rome, survival is equal parts etiquette, costume, and dumb luck. Your modern instincts are not helping. You tried to say hello. That's not a thing. Smiled politely at a guard. Suspicious. Recoiled from a blood-streaked butcher stall? Amateur. Everyone around you is operating with a social rule book you've never read. Now comes a man with scrolls under one arm and a sneer fixed on his face. He's a notarius, essentially a public secretary/scribe. He sees you and mutters something about delayed tribute. Is that about taxes? You have no idea, and he's gone before you can ask. That's another thing. No one has time for you. Historians still argue whether the average Roman citizen was welcoming to strangers. Some say hospitality was a valued virtue. Others point to an overwhelming number of laws regarding fraud, theft, and assault as signs that stranger danger was the default. As you try to blend into a crowd of toga-clad figures, it hits you. The city is enormous. The Roman Empire is vast, but even the city of Rome itself at its peak had over 1 million inhabitants. That's more than some modern capitals. And unlike your walkable suburb, everything here is crammed, stacked, and alive with motion. You pass a fountain, a lovely bit of marble statuary shaped like a nymph pouring water from a jug. You lean in to splash your face, only to find the water's questionable. Remember this. While aqueducts brought incredible engineering feats, the actual cleanliness of the water depended entirely on location. You might be standing at the end of a very long pipe used by 5 different neighborhoods. Quirky fact, public urinals were a thing, and not just for convenience. The government taxed urine, literally. Vespasian, the emperor known for frugality, instituted a urine tax because it was collected and used in tanning leather. So yes, you're surrounded by urine tax collectors. A distant trumpet sounds. Everyone stiffens. Is it an announcement? A procession, a fire, or worse, a tax official? You don't stick around to find out. A helpful child points you down an alley and mutters something that might be "run." You do. By the time you find yourself in a quieter side street, you're sweating, thirsty, and beginning to suspect your phone won't get a signal here. You sit down on a stoop, hoping to catch your breath. An elderly man approaches, squints at you, and drops a fig in your lap before hobbling off. This is fine, you think. This is normal. You take a bite of the fig, which is oddly gritty and possibly fermented. You may already have dysentery. Welcome to the Roman Empire. You are so not ready. The sun is climbing higher now, and with it, your doom becomes more fragrant. You realize your skin is already stinging. And why wouldn't it? You're dressed for a modern picnic, not for a Mediterranean sun that reflects off white marble like a magnifying glass aimed at your face. Here's the thing. Ancient Romans didn't have SPF 50. They didn't even have aloe vera gel. They had olive oil. Lots and lots of it. You see a vendor on the corner scooping glistening greenish oil from a jar and slathering it over his exposed arms with all the enthusiasm of a man polishing furniture. You hesitate, then try to copy him, dipping a finger into the vat. It's greasy and warm, and it smells like last week's salad. But your skin's turning pink already, so you follow suit. Welcome to Roman skincare. Part protection, part ritual, mostly just a way to smell like a very determined kitchen. Historians still argue whether Romans truly believed olive oil prevented sunburn or just used it as an all-purpose skin conditioner. Either way, it's better than the alternatives, like powdered snail shells or the more terrifying option of lead-based face creams. Yes, lead. In your pores. For that healthy, slow-death glow, a passing merchant eyes your slicked-up arms and offers a friendly nod. That's the first bit of social acceptance you've received today. Small win. Now the street's heating up, literally. The paving stones under your feet are cooking like pizza stones, and the heat is radiating up your legs with an enthusiasm that suggests they may soon be roasted. You retreat toward the shade of a portico, wiping olive oil from your brow, only to find that it's attracting every dust particle in the city. Congratulations, you're now a walking loaf of bread, lightly toasted and floured. To your dismay, you notice the locals aren't sunbathing. They're sheltering. Cloaked figures huddle in doorways, under canopies, and behind statues. Umbrellas aren't a thing, so wide-brimmed hats and literal awnings made of cloth do the trick. You, however, have none of these. You are one large, sweating, unprepared tourist baked to a flaky golden finish. Then someone yells, "Balneae apertae sunt!" A teen points toward the public baths and raises his eyebrows. Do you look that filthy already? Evidently, yes. But first, hydration. You spot a woman selling what looks like drinks, some kind of juice or flavored water, stored in clay jugs. You mime a sip. She nods, pours something into a wooden cup, and holds out her hand. You fumble for coins you don't have, offer her your watch. She squints, shrugs, and accepts it. You sip. It's not water. It's posca, a Roman favorite, made of vinegar, water, and herbs. Basically, salad dressing for hydration. You drink it anyway, trying not to cry. Fun fact, posca was beloved by Roman soldiers and workers. It was cheap, easy to make, and possibly helped prevent waterborne illness. But it's not refreshing unless you're into tangy swamp juice. Still, it's safer than raw aqueduct runoff, so you finish the cup. Refreshed is a strong word, but at least your mouth isn't dry. Your lips, though, chapped. You reach for balm. There is none. Romans used beeswax, rose oil, and sometimes animal fat. There's a man nearby selling lip tallow, and you decide, no, thank you. Your body is now a patchwork of olive oil sheen, sunburn, dust, and vinegary breath, and it's not even noon. A breeze picks up, offering momentary relief, before slamming into a nearby public restroom. The scent that hits you is catastrophic. You stagger. Your eyes water. Your soul tries to leave your body, and that, dear friend, is your first whiff of the Roman public latrine. It's coming up next, and yes, you have to use it. But for now, you duck into a shaded alley, crouch behind a column, and try to collect your thoughts. This empire is stunning, sure, but your body is already failing you. Your deodorant has failed. Your clothes are soaked, your scalp itches, and you have a fig seed stuck to your face. How did anyone survive this? Quirky aside, Romans loved sun exposure for vitamin D, but were also obsessed with pale skin as a sign of leisure. Rich people stayed indoors. Poor folks got tanned. You're now awkwardly bronzed, confused for either a foreigner or someone recently whipped. Neither is a good look. You think back to your morning routine at home. SPF, clean water, filtered air, breakfast you didn't have to barter for. In this world, every comfort has to be fought for or faked with pigeon feathers and fermented cabbages. A kid runs past laughing. He's holding your phone again. You let it go. The empire doesn't care. The sun doesn't care. And you're slowly turning into a very sweaty myth. And so you get up, wipe your face with a sleeve, and head toward the smell. Because if you're going to survive this place, even for a few more hours, you're going to have to face Roman plumbing next. You approach the Roman public latrine like it's a haunted house. The scent reaches you before the structure does, a blend of ammonia, damp stone, and a quiet sadness that clings to your nostrils, like wet wool. You hesitate at the threshold. Someone behind you nudges your back. Go, they mutter, and so you do. It's a stone building with no doors. The entry is open, and the inside dim. A few torch sconces flicker along the walls, casting erratic shadows over rows of smooth stone benches. You blink. Then you see it. Dozens of oval holes carved evenly into the stone, side by side. No partitions, no privacy, just fellowship. The air is thick. There's the drip of water from somewhere, the shuffle of sandals, and the occasional grunt. You shuffle forward, trying to appear as if this is completely normal. And for everyone else, it is. Here's a historical fact. Public latrines in ancient Rome were social spaces. People chatted while relieving themselves, discussed politics, debated taxes, even struck business deals mid-squat. You, however, are not ready to make friends in this environment. You eye the facilities. There's no toilet paper, obviously. What you do spot is a row of sponge-topped sticks, tersoriums, sitting in a channel of flowing water. That's the communal cleaning tool. You swallow hard. Historians still debate whether the tersorium water was changed often or just swirled around. Some believe the running channel helped. Others say it was a bacterial horror show. Either way, you're not reaching for it unless absolutely necessary. You pretend to tie your sandal and sneak back out, dignity mostly intact. The quirky part, Romans considered their latrines a civic innovation. Compared to earlier societies, they had real plumbing, drains, water flow, even a form of flushing thanks to constant trickles of water washing beneath the seats. But the reality of sharing a stick and sitting elbow to elbow with strangers makes you long for even the most questionable gas station restroom. Once outside, you inhale deeply. Big mistake. The breeze carries a different stench this time, garbage and donkey sweat, but still, it's a relief. You walk quickly, looking for a side street, or maybe a temple where you can pretend to be invisible. Instead, you trip. The culprit, an uneven paving stone. Your ankle twists, and your pride takes a hit. A nearby vendor chuckles and offers you a fig. That again. You wave it off and dust yourself off. You're now bruised, sweaty, and unrelieved. Excellent progress. A young man in a linen tunic jogs past, holding a large jar with one hand and a dripping sponge in the other. You don't want to know what either item is for. You move on. You stumble into a quieter courtyard ringed with columns. It seems peaceful until you realize it's another latrine. This one appears to be for wealthier Romans, perhaps part of a private domus or bathhouse. The layout is similar, but the stone is polished, and the tersoriums sit in little silver holders. Fancy sticks for fancy people. You remember reading that wealthier Romans sometimes had servants handle their hygiene needs. That's right, there were jobs dedicated entirely to handling another person's bathroom business. That makes your own trip seem positively DIY. Fun side note, in some preserved latrines, archaeologists found graffiti. Turns out, even in the toilet, Romans needed to express themselves. Some inscriptions were crude jokes, others were complaints about food. One simply said, "Here I had a good time." Charming. You duck out of the nicer latrine before someone accuses you of loitering. Back in the main street, the sun continues to rage. You glance around. Where do Romans go after their bathroom rituals? Maybe a bath? Maybe a nap? Instead, a loud horn blast pierces the air. Everyone turns toward the sound, except for you, who ducks reflexively. A soldier waves a red banner. People begin to scatter. Someone mutters about a minor fire in the Subura district. Another blames the gods. A child starts crying. You're beginning to think the forum is a bit like Times Square. Never quiet, never safe, always a little on fire. You want to sit somewhere, anywhere, and reflect. You want modern plumbing. You want a fan, a breeze, a bottle of fizzy water. You want privacy. But in the Roman Empire, these things are luxuries you can't even dream of yet. So you make a deal with yourself. You will not drink Posca again. You will not touch a communal sponge, and, if at all possible, you will avoid tripping into any more historically authentic bathrooms. You find a stone bench and collapse onto it. Someone offers you a fig. Again, is this the national fruit? You accept it this time, chewing slowly as pigeons squabble nearby. Your stomach makes a strange sound, and you decide now is a good time to see what passes for medical care around here. Spoiler, it's not great. But that's for later. For now, you bask in your minor victory. You entered a Roman public latrine, didn't faint, and escaped mostly intact. You're still doomed, of course. But at least you didn't have to use the sponge. Yet. You sit for a moment on the worn stone bench, knees aching slightly from the fall, face still glistening with a faint mix of sweat, dust, and olive oil. You are, by all local standards, thoroughly disheveled, but not yet arrested or dead, so that's a win. Just as you're beginning to contemplate whether pigeons in ancient Rome carry the plague, a pair of sharp, judgmental eyes land on you. They're coming from across the square. A man with an impossibly neat toga, golden fibula gleaming at his shoulder, is staring directly at your pants. Yes, we need to talk about your clothes. Your current outfit, a sensible t-shirt, cargo shorts, and unfortunate sneakers, makes you look like a foreign dignitary lost during an archaeological field trip. Every Roman you've seen so far is wrapped in layers of linen, wool, or, for the fancy folks, finely woven togas that seem engineered more for drama than function. And let's be clear, togas are not user-friendly. You glance at the man again. He's now whispering to a companion who is also wearing a toga so large and intricate it might require a pulley system. You watch as the folds billow with each calculated movement, and for a moment you foolishly wonder if you could pull it off too. Here's your historical fact. The toga was not daily wear for most Romans. It was a formal garment, typically reserved for male citizens performing public duties or attending big events. Think of it like a political red carpet outfit that screamed, "I am a citizen and I pay taxes." Women wore stolas, foreigners wore tunics, and you're an abomination of all dress codes. Historians still debate just how often average Romans wore togas outside public ceremonies. Some believe even senators preferred simpler tunics at home. Others suggest the toga was like an ancient business suit, uncomfortable but obligatory in certain settings. You decide, like an absolute maniac, to try blending in. Down a side alley, you find a modest clothier, a woman selling second-hand garments in various states of wear. You mime draping something around yourself. She eyes you, like you've just walked in wearing a cursed amulet, then shrugs and tosses you a faded but serviceable toga. It smells like goats and lost ambitions. Back outside, you begin to wrap it around yourself. Step 1. Figure out which end is the beginning. Step 2. Panic. The toga, in all its majestic impracticality, is roughly the size of a king-size bedsheet. It has no sleeves, no clasps, and no instructions. You try a fold over the shoulder. It slips. You try a wrap around the waist. It droops. You attempt the famous toga pull over the arm pose and nearly suffocate. A child watching nearby laughs, then tugs at the fabric and guides your fumbling hands. You follow his lead, and with a few artful folds, you're now swaddled in linen. You still look like a dying burrito, but now a Roman one. A quirky tidbit. Some Roman orators added hidden weights to their togas to keep them flowing just right during speeches. Others trained servants solely to help them get dressed each morning. You have neither weights nor staff, just shame and a very tight knot behind your back. You attempt to walk. The fabric pulls at your knees. You now understand why Roman citizens were so invested in slow, deliberate movement. It wasn't style, it was survival. If you trip in this thing, it will be the world's first linen-based catastrophe. As you shuffle through the square, a few passers-by nod. One even offers a polite salve. You respond with, you too, and keep going. Progress, then disaster. A gust of wind. Your toga lifts, not fully, but enough to send half of it flapping over your shoulder and into the face of a nearby guard. He stares, unfazed. You panic, spin, and trip again over your own feet. You fall into a basket of figs. You're getting real familiar with figs. The vendor screams. You try to apologize, but Latin is not your friend. The guard approaches. You brace for arrest. Instead, he grunts, adjusts your toga like a disappointed parent, and walks off. Apparently, even he knows it's not worth it today. You collect yourself and crawl out of the fig crate. Your toga is stained. Your pride is shredded. But you're clothed in ancient fashion now, and that counts for something. As you dust yourself off for the 5th time, a pair of women pass by and eye you curiously. One whispers something and giggles. Could be admiration, could be pity. You'll take it. You find a quieter corner near a fountain to regroup. Your new look is hot, itchy, and actively trying to strangle you with every breath. You miss your t-shirt. Still, you're slowly starting to understand the rhythm of this place. People here judge fast, talk faster, and expect you to keep up. Your clothes, posture, and scent all say something about who you are, even if who you are is lost and sticky. Now that you're dressed like a Roman, the city seems slightly less aggressive. Slightly. But there's still one thing no toga can fix. You're about to find out why walking down the sidewalk is a contact sport in ancient Rome. You leave the fig vendor's stall behind, sticky, shame-faced, and swaddled in a toga that's actively trying to trip you with every step. The good news? You've managed not to be arrested or accused of sorcery. The bad news? You're about to enter the Roman street system. Now, when you picture Rome, maybe you imagine clean, grand avenues, polished marble columns, and heroic busts on every corner. Well, yes and no. The main roads are indeed impressive. Some are even paved with basalt slabs so neatly set that you could practically roll a chariot across them with a glass of wine and not spill a drop. But those are the viae publicae, the fancy roads built to impress senators and gods. You, unfortunately, are on a vicus, a common street, which means uneven cobbles, ankle-snapping divots, and about 6 goats per square yard. You take a cautious step forward, trying to glide like a local. A moment later, a chicken explodes past your foot and vanishes into a cloud of feathers. It's absolute chaos. People are everywhere. Merchants hauling carts. Street performers juggling torches, kids racing each other with sticks, a man balancing amphorae on his shoulder while yelling about fish. And somewhere behind you, a donkey is relieving itself mid-stride without breaking pace. Welcome to Roman pedestrian culture. Bold, brutal, and deeply unconcerned with your personal space. You try to stay on the edge of the road where you imagine a sidewalk might be. You are wrong. There were sidewalks in ancient Rome, narrow, elevated stone ledges called crepidines, but they were often blocked by vendors, beggars, or spontaneous parades. You give one a try and immediately step on a man's sleeping dog. It yelps, he swears. You apologize in panicked English and dive back into the street. Mainstream historical fact: Roman streets were loud, crowded, and notoriously difficult to navigate. Seneca himself once wrote bitterly about how a peaceful stroll was impossible without being jostled, drenched, or stabbed in the thigh by a passing vendor's basket, and that was on a good day. Your toga snags on a market stall. You spin to free it and catch a whiff of something foul. You glance down. Oh no, you've stepped into a drainage channel. Your sandal now smells like yesterday's stew, horse urine, and regret. A woman with a woven basket swerves past you with the grace of a dancer. A child selling roasted chickpeas shoves a handful at your face. You sneeze. Somewhere behind you, someone is playing panpipes badly. It sounds like a swan dying in reverse. You retreat against a wall to catch your breath. Unfortunately, you have just leaned into a freshly painted mural of Mars stabbing a barbarian. The red pigment now decorates your toga. An old man shakes his head as he passes and mutters, "Barbarous." Again. Great, quirky tidbit. Roman graffiti and murals weren't just decorations. They were neighborhood advertisements, political commentary, and sometimes petty revenge notes. One famous piece of wall art in Pompeii reads, "We have wet the bed, I confess. We have erred, innkeeper." Honesty, at least, was timeless. Suddenly, a loud whistle cuts through the din. Everyone moves aside. You don't. A chariot barrels past, pulled by 2 sleek horses, and driven by a man with the kind of face that says, "My dad owns an aqueduct." He glares at you as he passes, kicking up a cloud of dust and judgment. You cough, your eyes water. The road is now a battlefield. Historians still argue whether Roman traffic was regulated in any meaningful way. Some believe magistrates enforced one-way street rules in major cities. Others say traffic flowed in whichever direction caused the most chaos. Based on current experience, you're siding with chaos. You press onward, weaving through the crowd like a drunken gladiator. A passing woman gives you a pitying glance and presses a small sprig of something into your hand. You stare at it. It's rosemary. You sniff it. It helps. Turns out, Romans often carried bundles of aromatic herbs to mask the smell of the city. There's no sewer system like modern cities have, just open drains, alleyway latrines, and a whole lot of faith. You tuck the rosemary behind your ear and instantly feel 3% more civilized. Then the bell rings. Not a church bell. Those don't exist yet. This one's attached to a fishmonger's cart. He rings it to announce the last of the day's seafood. The stench confirms it. People rush forward. You do not. You decide to keep your nose and dignity. You stumble across a strange stone structure. It looks like a step, but leads nowhere. You ask someone what it is. They tell you it's a stepping stone, a way to cross the street without getting your sandals wet. You blink. That's genius. Quirky fact, many Roman roads included elevated stepping stones at intersections so pedestrians could avoid the constant trickle of refuse and water. They were spaced precisely so cartwheels could pass through without disturbing them. It's the ancient equivalent of crosswalks, just wetter. You make a mental note to aim for stepping stones next time. But for now, you've had enough. Your feet ache. Your toga is red-streaked, fish-scented, and stuck to your leg. You feel like a roasted eggplant. There's a building nearby with smoke curling from its chimney and the sound of voices drifting out. A tavern, maybe. Somewhere with a bench and no donkeys. You limp toward it, hoping for shelter, food, and perhaps, dare you dream, a moment of peace. Instead, you're about to walk into the wildest meal of your life. You push open the tavern's heavy wooden door, or rather, push aside a curtain of dangling beads and faded fabric that vaguely resembles the world's saddest toga, and immediately stumble into a wall of noise and odor. The room is dark despite it being broad daylight outside, and it smells like smoke, wine, roasted meat, sweat, and something faintly pickled. Possibly the furniture. You're not here for ambiance. You're here for food, or more accurately, whatever passes for a Roman breakfast/lunch/emergency calorie intake. The tavern is called a popina, a rough working-class establishment where locals go to eat, drink, argue, and occasionally throw things. You squint in the dim light. There are no menus, no tables in the modern sense, just stone counters with deep-set clay pots sunk into them, steam rising from each with a different shade of questionable promise. A man with bushy eyebrows and the body of a wine barrel approaches. He grunts something you take to mean order. You hesitate. He sighs, ladles a scoop of something from one of the pots and slaps it into a shallow clay dish in front of you. You thank him because you're polite even in a crisis, and take a cautious whiff. It's pulse, a thick, porridge-like mush made from farro grain. It looks like beige cement and smells faintly of herbs and desperation. Still, your stomach growls. You take a bite. It's okay. Bland, a little gritty, but better than fig number 7. Mainstream historical fact. Pulse was a staple food for lower-class Romans. Think of it as oatmeal's dry, sarcastic cousin. It could be dressed up with vegetables or bits of meat, if you were lucky, but often it was just grain, water, and hope. You munch quietly, trying not to draw attention. But this is Rome. There is no quiet. The men next to you are loudly debating whether the green sauce from yesterday's stew caused Tiberius to vomit, or whether it was his mother-in-law's singing. One of them punches the other in the arm for suggesting both. You ask for something to drink. The wine, when it arrives, is cloudy and warm. You sip and immediately cough. It's been watered down, standard practice, but also seems to contain a hint of vinegar and maybe oregano. Quirky tidbit. Roman wine was rarely consumed straight. It was diluted with water, spiced with herbs, and sometimes even salted. The idea of drinking full-strength wine was considered barbaric behavior, a habit of uncivilized brutes. So congratulations, you're drinking civilized soup. Suddenly, a commotion at the door. A minor celebrity has arrived. Or at least, a loud man with fancy shoes and a coin purse. Everyone straightens slightly. He orders loudly, demands honeyed dormice, and declares the gods have smiled on him today. You glance around for said gods. Nothing. Just more clay bowls and a cat sleeping on a warm countertop. The loud man's food arrives in a rush. A steaming plate of garum-glazed sausages, a bowl of olives that have clearly seen better centuries, and a small dish of something grey that might be eel, or pudding, or both. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether garum, the famous Roman fermented fish sauce, was actually delicious or simply endured due to the lack of refrigeration. Some texts rave about it. Others imply it caused more nosebleeds than joy. You get a faint whiff and feel your stomach clench in defense. The tavern keeper eyes you. You're still working on your bowl of lukewarm farro paste. He offers a toothless smile and holds up a jar. You recognize the contents from various nightmares. It's a pickled bird. You politely decline and take another bite of your bland mush. Across the room, a couple is sharing what looks like a grape-stuffed pastry while holding hands and arguing about taxes. A man by the window is eating with alarming speed and leaving half his meal on his tunic. It strikes you that Romans, especially common ones, didn't use forks. Spoons and knives sometimes. Fingers, mostly. Napkins. Optional. You quietly dab your mouth with the edge of your toga and feel a crumb of fig fall out of your sleeve from earlier. A few musicians shuffle in with a lyre and a set of panpipes. They strike up a tune that sounds like someone trying to chase a goose while wearing sandals. You nod along. The beat isn't bad, actually. Then a street vendor bursts in with a tray balanced on his head. On it, honey cakes, figs, of course, and what look like little fried cheese balls. The tavern erupts. A few coins fly, and someone grabs the vendor's tray, nearly knocking it over. You grab a cheese ball in the chaos. It's hot. It burns your mouth. You love it anyway. You pay for your meal by awkwardly offering a bronze coin you found earlier. It might be real. The tavern keeper bites it, shrugs, and waves you out. Your stomach is now full of grain, lukewarm wine, and mystery cheese. You feel, for the first time since arriving, almost human. But not for long, because now that you've eaten, bathed in sweat, and made it through the latrine trials, it's time for the next Roman ritual: public bathing. You're about to enter the thermae, the grand communal bathhouses of the empire, equal parts spa, gym, and local debate stage. And yes, you will be very, very naked. You step back into the blazing Roman sunlight with a full belly and a half-melted cheese ball stuck to your toga. The street noise hits you again. Hoofbeats, shouting vendors, distant flute music that sounds like someone serenading a bag of weasels. But you're focused now. You've eaten. You've survived a fig-related fall and your first Roman meal. It's time to clean up. You're going to a bathhouse. Not a private one, mind you. You're heading to the thermae, the massive public bath complex that serves as the Roman answer to a day spa, social club, library, and gym, all at once. Everyone goes: senators, soldiers, scribes, merchants, gossips, and now, you. You follow the crowd toward a grand building that looks like a temple, except with less incense and more shouting. Steam rises lazily from the roof vents, and marble statues of naked gods flank the entrance like personal trainers from Olympus. Inside, it's humid, not just warm, moist. The air clings to your face. You're in the apoditorium, the changing room. Rows of benches line the walls, and niches hold sandals and tunics. Several men are already undressing casually, chatting about politics and wine imports like they're not all completely nude. You freeze. You're still clutching your toga like a security blanket. Historical fact: bathhouses were a central part of Roman social life. Admission was cheap, sometimes even free, thanks to civic sponsorships or generous emperors. Everyone came here, rich and poor alike. And yes, public nudity was normal. If you acted squeamish, people would stare. And stare they do. One elderly man eyes your hesitation and offers a polite nod, then strips off his tunic and folds it neatly. You take the hint. You disrobe slowly, like a peeled banana, full of shame, and attempt to cover yourself with your hands while pretending it doesn't bother you. You place your clothes in a niche. There's no lock, no number, just hope. You remember vaguely that Roman bathhouses employed capsarii, attendants who watched over personal belongings, often with the reliability of a sleepy raccoon. You nod at one who is currently asleep with a fig in his mouth. So, that's reassuring. You shuffle toward the tepidarium, the warm room. The floor is heated from below by the hypocaust, an ingenious system of raised floors with hot air from furnaces circulating underneath. The tiles are toasty on your bare feet, like walking on a sun-warmed patio. This room is for easing in, acclimating, sweating gently, and avoiding sudden cardiac arrest before the real heat hits. You sit beside a man with a curly beard who's pouring perfumed oil into his armpit. He offers you the bottle. You accept, miming gratitude, and realize you smell like olive oil and burned cheese. You dab the oil on your neck. He grunts in approval. Nice viscosity, he says, or maybe it was, you look confused. Hard to say. Latin's a slippery fish. Next comes the caldarium, the hot room. It hits you like a brick oven. The air is thick, steaming, and smells like sweat, eucalyptus, and a hint of roasted barley. A massive bronze cauldron bubbles in one corner, feeding the heat with ladles of boiling water poured onto the stone floor. You instantly start sweating, every pore screaming, "Why did you do this?" A bearded man with arms like marble columns motions for you to sit beside him. He's using a strigil, a curved metal scraper, to rake oil and dirt from his skin. He hands you one. You take it like it's a live snake. Quirky tidbit. Romans didn't use soap. Instead, they slathered their skin in oil, then scraped it off with the strigil. It worked surprisingly well, exfoliating everything from sweat to societal regret. You try it. It's oddly satisfying. A small pile of brownish oil goo gathers on the stone beside you. You flick it toward a nearby drain, where it joins the runoff of hundreds of other bathers. The water flows to a mysterious end. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether the average Roman bathhouse was hygienic. The architecture was brilliant, but with hundreds of sweaty bodies, communal water, and those half-sleeping attendants, it's safe to say germs weren't unknown. Still, you feel cleaner, less like a goat, more like a lightly boiled vegetable. Time for the frigidarium, the cold plunge pool. You follow a crowd through an arched doorway into a vaulted room where the air drops 15 degrees. A round stone pool gleams in the center, water dark and still. You hesitate. The bearded man jumps in like it's a hobby. You take a deep breath, step forward, and plunge. It's a shock. The cold crashes over you, a slap from Neptune himself. Your muscles clench. Your soul briefly leaves your body to file a formal complaint. Then it passes. You float, blinking at the carved ceiling above, nymphs, dolphins, endless vines, and feel, for the first time all day, peace. This was why they came, wasn't it? For this moment. For silence, cool relief, and the illusion that everything outside didn't smell like spoiled garum. You haul yourself out, dripping, refreshed, and vaguely reborn. A servant hands you a linen cloth. You wrap it around yourself and return to the apoditerium. Your toga is gone. You blink. The capsaria snores, oblivious. You poke him gently. He mutters something and points to a pile. You sort through it. A too-short tunic, a damp cloak, a toga with an alarming stain. You sigh and pick the cloak. You are now clean but fashionably downgraded. Still, you've done it. You've bathed with strangers, used a strigil, and survived a Roman cold plunge without screaming. That's enough for now. Next up, a dinner party you weren't invited to, but will absolutely attend. Reclining is mandatory. Dignity is optional. You step back into the sun. wrapped in a borrowed cloak that smells faintly of someone else's cologne and possibly goat. But you're clean now, or at least your ancient Rome clean, scraped down with oil, doused in mystery herbs, and recently dunked like a nervous salad in a cold bath. You walk with renewed dignity, or at least as much as one can manage while barefoot and still a little damp. Then you hear it. Music, lutes, pipes, soft drumming, and the unmistakable hum of chatter and laughter. Somewhere nearby, people are gathering. And wherever Romans gather, there is food, possibly too much food. You follow the sound down a marble-lined alley and find a domus, an elegant Roman home with fluted columns, open courtyards, and a row of sandals neatly stacked near the doorway. That's when you realize you're about to crash a cena, the formal Roman dinner party, and you look like a slightly confused statue from the garden. Still, you walk in boldly, like someone with absolutely no invitation and even less shame. Inside, everything is glowing. Oil lamps flicker, perfumed smoke curls from incense burners, rich textiles hang from the walls, and gold-rimmed plates glitter on the low tables. People are reclining on couches, lounging like they invented both dinner and naps, which, honestly, they kind of did. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman elite dinners were all about status. Guests reclined on triclinia, U-shaped couches around the table. The more important you were, the better your couch position. The less important you were, well, you probably stood and fetched wine. You slink in and hover by the door. A slave glances at you, shrugs, and hands you a cup of wine. That counts as an invitation now, apparently. You take a seat on a cushion in the corner, trying to blend in. On the table are dishes you recognize: bread, olives, cheese, and several you absolutely don't. A roasted dormouse, stuffed with herbs and something sweet, a tray of snails, a platter of what looks like boiled sow's udder. You decide to focus on the olives. A woman across from you raises her glass and says, "Saepe satur, numquam laetatus." You blink. She laughs. "Too full to be happy," she translates. "You'll learn." Dinner begins. Not all at once, but in acts. Like theater, only greasier. Gustatio, the appetizer course. Olives, boiled eggs with pine nut sauce, honeyed wine, and, of course, garum, drizzled liberally over everything. You dip a crust of bread and try not to wince. It tastes like salted despair. Historians still debate how popular garum actually was. Some evidence suggests it was used sparingly, like a strong condiment. Others insist it was Rome's ketchup, on everything all the time, even dessert. You're beginning to believe the latter. Next comes prima mensa, the main course. The servers parade in like actors on a stage, announcing each dish. Peacocks with their feathers reattached. Fish stuffed with other fish. A whole boar, open-mouthed and smoking. You blink so hard your eyelashes try to escape. You take a small bite of something pink. It melts in your mouth, spiced and oddly citrusy. Then the host slaps the table and bellows something about reciting poetry. The room quiets. A guest clears his throat and begins a long, winding poem about Jupiter's angry toe. It goes on for a while. Someone coughs into a wine jug. You glance around. People are reclining in various states of attention. A few nod along. One man snores quietly. Someone is feeding a parrot grapes. You've entered not just a dinner, but a full social ritual, equal parts performance, networking, digestion, and passive-aggressive toasting. Quirky tidbit, Romans didn't use forks. They used fingers, knives, and spoons, and they loved reclining while eating. The ideal position. Leaning on your left elbow, eating with your right hand. It was elegant, indulgent, and terrible for your posture. You attempt it and immediately cramp. Then, the secunda mensa, dessert. Figs, obviously, honey cakes, dates, candied nuts, and a sweet wine so thick it could probably patch a roof. You sip and feel the sugar coat your teeth. It's delicious. You chase it with a sticky fig and lean back, full and semi-conscious. That's when the entertainment escalates. A man in a lion mask begins miming what appears to be a myth involving Jupiter, a cow, and poor life decisions. Laughter ripples through the room. Someone juggles 3 apples. Another man begins quoting Virgil backwards. Someone starts singing about fish. A parrot squawks, "More wine." It is frankly chaos, but elegant chaos. Then comes the satura, the stuffed moment. Not a dish, but a state. Everyone is too full to move, too drunk to reason, and too polite to vomit, though it was rumored to happen, often discreetly. You feel your limbs grow heavy. You've eaten things you can't pronounce. You've heard poems about turnips and flutes. You've survived. The host claps twice. Slaves enter with scented oils. Guests are massaged as they sip their final wine. A woman near you whispers, "Now comes the part where we all pretend this wasn't ridiculous." And just like that, the scene winds down. You rise, slowly, like an ancient tortoise in a wet sheet, and stumble toward the exit. A servant hands you a candied almond. You eat it automatically. Outside, the stars are out. The streets are quieter. You've been fed, entertained, and socially overwhelmed. In modern terms, you've survived a Roman dinner party without fainting, offending a senator, or vomiting on a slave. That's pretty impressive. Tomorrow, you'll worry about your missing toga, the lingering smell of peacock stuffing in your cloak, and whatever that singing parrot was on about. But tonight, you'll sleep like a Roman, sweaty, overstuffed, and deeply confused. Or you would, if the tenement you're about to find hasn't caught fire again. The Roman night presses in as you make your way through dim, winding streets, body heavy from too many olives and a dangerous number of honey cakes. You're full, exhausted, and clinging to the faint hope of finding somewhere, anywhere, to sleep. Eventually, you spot a cluster of tall, narrow buildings looming against the torch-lit sky. These are insulae, the Roman version of apartment blocks. Think of them as a cross between a tenement and a slightly hostile Jenga tower. Mainstream historical fact. Most Romans lived in these insulae, especially in densely packed urban neighborhoods like the Subura. While the wealthy lounged in sprawling villas with mosaic floors and private gardens, the average citizen lived crammed into rented rooms above noisy, chaotic streets. The higher the floor, the cheaper and riskier the rent. You make your way inside one of the buildings, climbing uneven wooden stairs that groan under your weight, like they've made peace with their eventual collapse. The walls are cracked. The hallways are barely wide enough for your elbows. You pass a child carrying a small goat. Neither seem surprised to see you. Your assigned room is near the top. Bad news for your legs, worse news for your odds of surviving a fire. The door creaks open, revealing a space barely larger than a closet. There's a straw mattress on the floor, a broken clay oil lamp, and something skittering in the corner that you choose not to investigate further. You lie down. The mattress crunches underneath you. Literally, it's filled with straw, possibly hay, and probably also bugs. It smells faintly of mildew, body odor, and someone else's unresolved trauma. The ceiling sags. The walls are paper thin. You can hear your neighbors on every side, a couple arguing about lentils, someone playing a reed flute very badly, and what might be a cat fight. Or just 2 cats? Or 2 people pretending to be cats? You don't ask. Quirky tidbit. Roman insulae were notorious fire hazards. Built mostly of wood and brick, often with cooking fires on every floor and oil lamps left burning overnight, they were essentially kindling stacked vertically. Fires were so common that Augustus himself created a special force of vigiles, the Roman equivalent of firefighters, to patrol the streets at night. You reach over to light your oil lamp and think better of it. You'd rather sleep in the dark than wake up in a screaming blaze. Besides, your eyes are already closing, your limbs heavy, and your stomach still fighting with that fermented fish sauce from earlier. Then comes the drip. Plink. 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 Somewhere in the ceiling, water, or possibly wine, has found its way through. A steady drip lands just beside your head. You scoot slightly. The drip follows. You accept that this is now your life. You pull the threadbare cloak tighter. The straw beneath you crunches again. Your back is starting to itch. You scratch. A flea bites you in protest. Excellent. Historians still argue whether the conditions in insulae were universally terrible or just mostly terrible. Some seem to have had courtyards and better ventilation. Others collapsed mid-dinner. You're currently in the latter camp. Your floor tilts slightly. You try not to roll into the wall. Just as you're drifting off, there's a loud crack from the floorboards above. Dust sifts down. You stare at the ceiling. You're not sure whether someone's dancing or if their oven just fell through. Then comes the shouting. Outside, on the street below, someone is being accused of stealing a fish. You catch the words thief and squid eater and something about someone's mother. You turn to your side and jam a fist under your cheek. A donkey brays in the alley. Someone slams a shutter. The reed flute next door hits a note so high your teeth hurt. This is Roman bedtime, a soft mattress of straw and terror, lullabies of street arguments, and the looming threat of structural collapse. You roll over again. The cloak slips off. You tug it back. Your foot finds a particularly sharp piece of straw. You hiss, then you laugh quietly. Because really, what else can you do? You're alone, uncomfortable, and wearing a second-hand cloak in a stranger's collapsing attic. But you're also alive, and that counts for something. You close your eyes again. For a moment, the noises fade into background hums. You almost fall asleep. Almost. Then something lands on your chest. Small, furry, alive. You bolt upright, flinging whatever it was into the dark. It thuds, squeaks, runs away. You sigh. There's no sleeping in Rome. Not here. Not now. Not with fleas, donkeys, and ceiling squirrels. Not when your neighbors are cooking lentils at midnight and playing jazz panpipes through the wall. You lie back down, arms crossed, eyes open, waiting for dawn. Because tomorrow you've got to bribe a magistrate, or beg one. Or just try to keep your shoes. Either way, you'll need what little rest you can claw from the crumbling floorboards of this glorious, utterly exhausting empire. The first light of dawn seeps through the cracks in your insular wall like a guilty apology. Birds begin squabbling outside, a street vendor coughs twice, and somewhere in the building someone starts hammering for no discernible reason. You're not so much waking up as being informed by your surroundings that sleep is over. You peel yourself off the straw mattress, which has imprinted a map of the Alps on your back. Your cloak is bunched at your knees, and your feet are suspiciously itchy. You stretch and hit your knuckles on the wall. The neighboring room answers with a groggy grunt and something that sounds like a curse involving lentils and Neptune's beard. No time to linger. You've got something important to deal with this morning. The law. You don't know how or why, but during your chaotic first day in Rome, you managed to get yourself on the bad side of a local official. Possibly by accidentally toppling a fig cart, or staring too long at a senator's sandal straps, or breathing wrong. In any case, you're due at the basilica, not the religious kind, but the public hall, where legal cases are heard, and unfortunately where yours might be decided. Mainstream historical fact: Roman courts weren't stuffy rooms with powdered wigs. They were open public spaces, buzzing with spectators, lawyers, and bored citizens hoping for juicy arguments. Cases range from murder to property disputes to what you're currently facing, accidental tunic trampling. You make your way there still dressed in the borrowed cloak, hoping no one notices the subtle smell of mildew and roasted eel. You pass merchants setting up stalls, beggars yawning beneath porticos, and priests burning incense to Jupiter Optimus Maximus. The smell is thick and sweet, like a divine bakery just on fire enough to worry you. The basilica looms large ahead, flanked by Corinthian columns and carved panels depicting famous trials. You try not to make eye contact with the statue of a man being bitten by a goat while pleading his innocence. Inside, chaos reigns. There's no orderly line, no security check, no "take a number." People shout. Advocates in togas pace back and forth, quoting Cicero at speeds that would make auctioneers blush. A woman in the back is selling bread rolls. Someone else is napping on the floor. You're waved toward a magistrate, an austere-looking man seated behind a raised platform, flanked by scribes with ink-stained fingers and smug expressions. He looks at you, then at a wax tablet. "Barbarous?" he asks, raising one eyebrow. You nod. That seems accurate. He sighs. "Tunic damage. Market Square." "Witness says you lunged." "I tripped," you offer. "Of course you did." He gestures to the scribe, who begins carving something onto a new tablet with a stylus that looks just sharp enough to stab truth into wood. You have no advocate, no bribe, and no clue how this works. Luckily, a man appears beside you, a fast-talking, wild-eyed individual in a slightly stained toga who proclaims himself a patronus. "I will represent this citizen," he declares, loud enough to turn heads. You don't remember hiring him. He smells like wine and confidence, quirky tidbit. In Roman times, wealthier citizens often acted as patrons to clients, helping them with legal troubles in exchange for loyalty, favors, or simply the joy of hearing themselves talk. This man is clearly enjoying himself. He argues your case with passion, declaring you an innocent foreigner caught in the folds of civic misfortune. He waves his arms, quotes the 12 tables, and accuses the fig vendor of setting a trap with poorly placed produce. Historians still argue whether Roman courts leaned more toward law or theatrics. Based on this performance, you'd put your money on the latter. The magistrate stares. The scribe stops writing. Your patronus bows. Silence. Finally, the magistrate shrugs and says, "Fine. Pay a half sestertius in damages. And next time, watch where you step." He scribbles a mark and waves you away like a bothersome pigeon. You exhale. Your patronus claps you on the back and immediately asks if you can spot him a meal. You hand him a coin, possibly foreign, probably worthless, and escape the basilica before anyone changes their mind. Back outside, the sun is rising in earnest. It hits the marble walls and throws golden light into the square. For a brief moment, Rome is beautiful, shining, vibrant, full of potential. You pause to admire it. Then a chicken explodes out of a cart beside you and knocks over your patronus. You keep walking. Still, you've survived your first encounter with Roman law. You didn't end up fined into oblivion. You didn't get whipped. And you didn't accidentally insult an imperial relative. That's a win. Maybe even your first real one. But don't get cocky. Because, as the city wakes up and the smell of fresh bread mingles with donkey sweat and incense, you remember what's next. You're expected at a job site. What job? You're about to find out. You follow a narrow road that curves past a line of statues missing various limbs, stepping carefully around puddles of unknown origin. You're not sure how or why this happened, but apparently you've been assigned a job. It started with a man shouting at you near the forum yesterday, something about needing strong hands and weak minds. You hadn't understood most of it. Latin is still 40% mystery, but he handed you a wooden token and pointed east. Now, with the token in hand and absolutely no idea what you're walking into, you trudge toward what appears to be a construction site. Ah, Roman labor, welcome. The site is a hive of activity. Dozens of sweaty, soot-smeared men shout instructions, haul stones, stir mortar, and argue over scaffold placement while pretending not to drop things on one another. A thick cloud of dust hangs in the air, making you cough before you even speak. A foreman with a broken nose and a tablet of names squints at you, snatches your wooden token, grunts, and points at a pile of bricks. You've been conscripted into manual labor, mainstream historical fact. While Rome was powered by slaves and free laborers alike, public construction projects also pulled in temporary workers, often poor citizens or foreigners trying to earn favor. The work was brutal, the tools primitive, and safety protocols non-existent. Welcome to the Roman workforce. You're handed a basket and told to move bricks from one side of the site to the other, not build with them. Just move them. Then move them back again later, because someone always changes their mind. You take one, then two, and quickly learn something important. Roman bricks are enormous. The clay is rough and unforgiving. It scrapes your palms. The basket cuts into your forearms. You break into a sweat within seconds and instantly regret your breakfast wine. As you stagger under the weight of your load, a passing worker mutters something about soft hands and chuckles. You nod because yes. Your hands were designed for keyboards and cappuccinos, not raw clay and ancient architecture. Still, you keep at it. You find a rhythm. Pick up, wobble, drop off. Pick up, wobble, drop off. Occasionally dodge a goat. Occasionally curse a sunbeam to Hades. Quirky tidbit. Romans often used pozzolana, a special volcanic ash, to mix into their concrete. It made their structures incredibly strong and long-lasting. Some of their buildings still stand today, long after the workers like you were turned into ash themselves. You pass a pair of men stirring mortar in a massive wooden vat. It smells like wet bread and sadness. One of them offers you a cup of water. You sip and immediately gag. It's thick, warm, and has a twig floating in it. The man shrugs. Spring-fed, he says proudly. You politely pretend to finish. Nearby, a group of slaves is chiseling a slab of marble into something vaguely column-shaped. One of them hums. Another sneezes violently and doesn't stop working. You stare. Nobody reacts. You decide not to sneeze, just in case it counts as quitting. Then the foreman calls you over. He points up. Up is bad. Up is a rickety wooden scaffold, 5 stories tall, swaying gently in the breeze. It's tied together with rope, wishful thinking, and a disturbing number of sharp angles. You climb. Historians still argue whether Roman scaffolding was safe or merely less fatal than leaping directly into the Tiber. Based on this creaky structure, you're leaning toward mildly fatal. You reach the top and are handed a trowel. Now you're doing masonry. Poorly. You slap mortar on a stone. It splats. You place a brick. It wobbles. The man beside you sighs loudly, rips the brick away, and replaces it with a satisfying thunk. You nod like you meant to do that. He rolls his eyes and moves on. An hour passes. Then another. Your arms ache. Your back screams. Your knees whisper threatening things about rebellion. You sit for a moment and get yelled at. You stand again and immediately drop a brick. It lands in a cart full of figs. You're cursed. A slave near the column offers you a piece of hard cheese from his pouch. You accept. It's rock solid and smells like injustice, but you chew slowly, grateful for the break. The cheese wedges itself between your teeth like a tiny marble tile. You will never be rid of it. The sun climbs higher. Your skin is burning. You miss your fig-free breakfast and your comparatively forgiving straw mattress. A pigeon lands beside you and watches you sweat, judging you with its tiny stone-gray eyes. Then the bell rings. Work stops. People stretch, spit, and trudge off to sit in the shade. You collapse onto a cool stone block. arms hanging at your sides like wet ropes. You've never felt more like a collection of bones held together by regret. The foreman tosses you a cup. It contains Posca again. Of course it does. You sip and try not to die, despite everything. The aches, the cheese brick in your molars, the fact that your cloak is now mortar-stained and smells like donkey hoof, you've done it. You've worked a Roman job, and you haven't collapsed, yet. But the day isn't over, because now someone mentions a trip to the Colosseum. Just to watch, they say. Just a show. Right. You're about to find out what just a show really means in the Roman Empire. You limp along the road with the other workers, every muscle aching, your arms trembling slightly from the weight of too many bricks and one traumatic cheese encounter. Dust clings to your sweat-slicked skin, and your borrowed cloak now looks like it's been through 3 battles and 1 kitchen fire. Someone next to you casually says, "Let's catch the show at the amphitheater." You, in your delirious state, agree. Entertainment sounds great. Maybe a comedy, maybe music. You imagine a gentle lute solo and reclining on a cushion with grapes, and then the Colosseum appears. It dominates the skyline like an enormous, arrogant donut of death. 4 stories of arches, flags flapping, stairs twisting up like marble intestines. You've seen it in books. You've seen it in films. But standing in front of it now, smelling the baked stone and roasted meat vendors nearby, is something else entirely. It's not just a monument, it's a mood. And the mood is, please scream louder for the lions. Mainstream historical fact. The Colosseum, also called the Flavian Amphitheater, could seat up to 50,000 Romans. Entry was free for citizens thanks to the emperors who understood that nothing keeps a population distracted quite like bread and circuses. Today's circus. Venatio, or beast hunts. You're swept up in the crowd, men, women, kids holding honeyed nuts, and someone with a monkey on their shoulder shuffling through towering stone arches. A server hands you a piece of barley bread. You accept it automatically. A child offers you a fig, of course. You wave it off. The seats are carved stone, steep and blinding in the midday sun. You end up in the upper tiers, reserved for the poor, the smelly, and those who might scream the loudest. From up here, the arena floor below looks like a pit designed specifically to terrify you. You sit. Your legs throb. Your nose twitches. The man next to you is holding a bag of something that smells like pickled goat. He offers it. You decline. Trumpets blare. The crowd cheers. Below, a gate opens, and out walks a bear. You freeze. The bear looks unimpressed. It shuffles forward, snorts, and promptly sits down, scratching its stomach with a kind of casual menace that says, "I didn't ask for this either." The crowd laughs. The bear trainer enters, cracks a whip, and the bear reluctantly stands. Then the next gate opens. A man in armor stumbles out, holding a spear that looks too short and a shield that looks like he bought it second-hand. The crowd cheers louder now. The man and bear circle each other. This is the Venatio, and you suddenly realize this is the mild portion of the day. Quirky tidbit. Romans didn't just watch animals fight humans. They staged elaborate recreations of wild hunts with imported beasts from across the empire. Lions from North Africa, crocodiles from Egypt, elephants from India. Some events involved mock jungles and fake rivers built on pulleys. It was theater, blood, and spectacle all rolled into one sunburned afternoon. Historians still argue whether these fights were always fatal. Some records suggest certain performers were professionals who were spared if they entertained the crowd. Others were not so lucky. Today's bear loses interest and saunters off stage to booze and thrown olives. Then comes the next act. A gladiator match. Trumpets scream. 2 fighters stride out, one with a massive curved sword and a helmet shaped like a fish, the other with a net and trident. The crowd goes feral. People stand, wave scarves, shout names. It's half football match, half nightmare. You flinch as the first clash of weapons echoes off the walls. Sparks fly. The net is thrown. The sword misses. A trident scrapes stone. It's graceful, violent, and disturbingly rhythmic. The fish-helmeted one wins, knocking the other to the ground. He raises his blade, then looks to the crowd. This is the part you've heard about. The defeated man raises his hand in plea. The victor waits. The crowd begins to chant, some calling for mercy, others blood. They look up at the emperor's box, even though today it's empty. A local magistrate stands instead and waves his hand downward. The blade falls. The crowd roars. You sit very, very still. The people around you are unfazed. Children clap. An old woman tosses bread at a performer. A group nearby starts betting on the next match. To them, it's spectacle. To you, it's deeply surreal. A man behind you pats your shoulder and says something encouraging in Latin. It might have been, "Wasn't that great?" or "He died well." Either way, you nod slowly, then stare straight ahead as if you've just read the full terms and conditions of existence. Then someone nearby asks, "Would you fight if you had to?" and laughs. You do not laugh. Instead, you quietly inch away and begin plotting your escape. You've had enough of Roman leisure. If this is what they do for fun, you're starting to understand why their philosophers always look so tired. As the next trumpet blasts and another pair of combatants enters the arena, you slip down the steps, past vendors hawking tiny wooden gladiator toys and souvenir oil flasks, and into the shade of the arches. You're done. You've seen the circus. It saw you back, and now you need to walk somewhere, anywhere, where no one is screaming, bleeding, or selling bear-themed snacks. You've heard rumors of a temple nearby. Quiet, cool, peaceful, probably filled with incense and statues. You don't even care what god it's for. You just want to sit, breathe, and try to forget the fish helmet guy. You leave the Colosseum behind like someone escaping a very loud, very aggressive family reunion where someone definitely lost an arm. The crowd noise fades slowly, replaced by the distant clop of hooves and the soft thud of sandals on stone. Your ears are still ringing. Your soul feels scuffed. You wander through a side street lined with statues missing noses and limbs. You're sticky, sunburned, and mildly traumatized. Which, you're beginning to realize, is just how Romans feel most of the time. Eventually, you find it, a small temple, tucked between two larger buildings, like a bookmark in a very chaotic history book. It's dedicated to Vesta, goddess of the hearth and home. There's no one selling figs out front, no shouting, no lions. Just a small line of pilgrims placing offerings, a handful of grain, a polished shell, a tiny clay figurine. You exhale. Mainstream historical fact. Vesta's temples were tended by the Vestal virgins, priestesses chosen as young girls and sworn to chastity for 30 years. They guarded the sacred fire, believed to protect the city itself. If it went out, bad omen. Really bad. You step inside. The temperature drops. The air smells like smoke and lavender. In the center, the sacred fire burns steadily in a raised hearth, flickering gold and red, casting long shadows against the marble walls. You shuffle forward quietly. Your sandals scuff slightly. You bow your head and try to look respectful, even though you're 80% sweat and 20% pastry crumbs at this point. You find a quiet spot to sit near a column. The stone is cool against your back. You close your eyes for a moment. No screams. No bricks. No cheese that fights back. Just quiet. A Vestal glides past you. She doesn't speak. She simply nods and continues placing a handful of dried rose petals into a small clay bowl. The petals ignite on contact with the flame, curling into fragrant ash. It's oddly hypnotic. You sit there a while, trying to make sense of the day. The bathhouse, the food, the bear. The guy with the trident. The cheese. Oh gods, the cheese. A low chant begins from somewhere behind the altar. Soft, rhythmic, soothing. You don't know the words, but the sound vibrates in your ribs. It's peaceful in the way only sacred places can be, gently removed from the mess of daily life, like a pocket of order in a city built on shouting and elbowing. Then someone sneezes nearby and drops a clay lamp. It shatters. The fire flickers. Several heads turn. A vestal calmly gathers the pieces and sweeps them into a basket, not saying a word. The person who sneezed looks ready to flee the empire. You know how they feel. Quirky tidbit. The Vestals held serious power for women in ancient Rome. They could own property, free prisoners, even influence political decisions. But if they broke their vow of chastity, the punishment was harsh, buried alive. So, high stakes. Historians still argue whether the Vestals had genuine political agency or were symbolic figureheads. Some records suggest they influenced emperors. Others say they were more ceremonial than practical. Either way, in a city obsessed with gods and omens, their word carried weight. You remain seated, watching the fire dance. For a moment, you forget your feet hurt. You forget the toga you never got back. You forget the bear. Then your stomach growls loudly. Several people glance your way. You smile weakly and mouth, "Sorry." A nearby woman offers you a date wrapped in fig leaf. You accept it with the reverence of someone offered salvation. You chew slowly. It's sticky and earthy and exactly what you needed. Not flashy. Not fermented, just food from a person. Without fanfare. You stay a little longer. Eventually, you thank the priestesses with an awkward bow and head back outside. The sun has dipped slightly. The city is glowing again, but softer now. Orange light glints off rooftops. The dust looks golden. It almost feels like the Rome you imagined. Mystical, ancient, timeless, less sweaty. But the moment doesn't last, because as you round the next corner, you hear drums. Big drums. You follow the noise, curiosity overriding every instinct you developed during the Colosseum disaster. What you find is confusing. A procession is winding its way through the street. Masked dancers, clashing cymbals, flower petals in the air, people cheering. At the center, a massive wooden cart bearing a giant statue of a god with far too many eyes. Ah, you've stumbled into a festival. Specifically, a religious festival, possibly for Bacchus, the god of wine, chaos, and really poor impulse control. You consider retreating. Then someone hands you a cup of wine and yells, "Drink." You drink, you dance, you get hit in the face with a wreath of laurel leaves. You're definitely not in the temple anymore, and just like that, the calm is over. You've been swept up in the next chapter of Roman chaos. Tomorrow you'll regret this, but tonight you're part of the parade. The parade sweeps you along like a runaway cart full of overexcited priests and tipsy shopkeepers. You're not walking so much as being herded, a bundle of limbs and poorly tied sandals caught in a Bacchic riptide. Masked dancers twirl around you, tossing rose petals and shouting hymns you don't understand. One of them paints a streak of red dye across your forehead. Another tries to stuff a laurel crown onto your head, but it slips down over your eyes. Now you're half blind and wholly committed. You're officially part of the Bacchanalia. Mainstream historical fact. Bacchic festivals, originally secretive, nocturnal rites, eventually became semi-official holidays full of music, drink, ecstatic dancing, and occasionally deeply concerning behavior. So concerning, in fact, that the Roman Senate tried to suppress them in 186 BCE. That didn't stop anyone. If anything, it made them louder. You swirl in a circle as musicians pound drums with the subtlety of a siege. A man dressed as a goat hands you a small clay cup. You drink without asking. It tastes like fermented raisins and enthusiasm. Your knees begin to wobble in time with the beat. Someone yells, "Iobake," and everyone cheers. The air is thick with incense and sweat. You're dancing now, whether you meant to or not. The crowd roars with approval as you accidentally knock over a fruit stand, then help the owner scoop up oranges, who then gives you one as thanks, or maybe as a bribe to please leave. A woman dressed in sheer layers of purple silk grabs your arm and shouts, "You are blessed by the god of madness," before handing you a baby goat. You hold it awkwardly. It sneezes in your face and tries to eat your laurel crown. You laugh so hard you nearly drop it. Quirky tidbit. Festivals in Rome often blurred the line between religious devotion and public performance. Some processions featured actors dressed as gods, animals, or even concepts like victory or pestilence. At least once, a drunken man tried to marry a statue of Fortuna. He was fined and only mildly discouraged. Historians still argue whether the Bacchanalia were true religious experiences or just state-sanctioned excuses for wild parties. Based on the group of flute players currently attempting to harmonize with a donkey, you'd say it's both. The parade winds through tighter alleys now, bouncing through the Subura district, a place known for its brothels, bars, and a charming local custom of yelling rude jokes from windows. Several of these jokes are aimed at you. You try to hand the goat off to someone, but it seems emotionally attached. It licks your tunic. You accept this fate. As you turn a corner, a wave of flower petals rains from an upper window. You look up just in time to get hit in the face with a turnip. It thuds softly and drops to the ground. A woman above yells, "Offer it to Bacchus," and disappears. You do as instructed. The goat attempts to eat the offering mid-prayer. You're led into a plaza where a large wooden altar is set up. Musicians take their places. People gather around singing. Some sob, others sway. One man is simply spinning. The statue of Bacchus, tall, gilded, and deeply unconcerned, is raised on a platform draped in ivy and wine-stained linen. Then someone calls for silence. A priest steps forward. He's older, robed in dark red, with wine-dark lips and a voice like thunder hiding in a wine cellar. He begins a slow, rhythmic invocation. The crowd murmurs along. You don't know the words, but the tone is unmistakable. Reverence, intoxication, surrender. He lifts a jug and pours wine onto the altar. Everyone around you drops to their knees. You hesitate, then kneel too, cradling the goat, who bleats softly and nibbles your fingers. It's a strange moment, sincere, surreal, and slightly sticky. You're exhausted, wine-slicked, and full of barley bread you didn't ask for. But as the chant swells and the scent of crushed grapes and incense hangs heavy in the warm air, something clicks. The Romans aren't just partying. They're reaching. Toward their gods, their ancestors, their fears, their desires. In a world full of instability, fires, floods, food shortages, political backstabbing, this chaos is a kind of order. This noise is their prayer. The priest finishes the chant. The crowd erupts into cheers again. People begin embracing, throwing fruit, and returning to their dance. You stand, groggy and goat-laden. Someone offers you more wine. You shake your head. You've reached your divine limit. You slip away from the crowd, stumbling into a quieter side street, now dim with sunset shadows. The goat finally hops down and trots away like it's late for another ritual. You watch it disappear around a corner. Your feet ache. Your head spins. Your cloak is missing again. You have no idea how you got red dye in your ear. And yet, you're smiling. Rome, for all its grime, chaos, and deeply weird religious festivals, is alive, and somehow, so are you. Still, the day is slipping into evening, and you're beyond ready to collapse. You need sleep, real sleep. Without drums, without turnips, without a goat nibbling your chest hair, you remember someone at the bathhouse whispering about a nearby insula that's actually quiet. That may have been a lie. But tonight, you'll risk it. One more walk through the city, one more gamble with fate. Tomorrow, they say, the army recruiters will be in town. You're going to want to be invisible when that happens. Your legs feel like they've been chiseled out of overcooked lentils as you shuffle down another cobbled street, stepping over scattered grape skins, discarded sandals, and what you sincerely hope was not a ceremonial wig. The scent of wine, sweat, and burnt offerings clings to your clothes and your soul. You're determined to find this allegedly quiet insula someone swore existed. You've already passed 3 that looked less like housing and more like well-stacked death traps. One had a staircase that ended halfway up the wall. Another had smoke curling out of the roof. A third was missing its entire front wall, but still housed a man asleep in a chair who waved at you like this was perfectly normal. Eventually, you find one tucked behind a baker's stall, just outside the more raucous parts of the Subura district. It's squat, cracked, and vaguely slanted, but miraculously quiet. A single torch flickers near the door. You knock. No answer. You knock again. A tired woman opens the door a sliver, eyes you up and down, and sighs. One night, you nod. She shrugs and opens the door wider. You follow her up a narrow flight of steps that smell like yeast and regret. At the top, she points to a room. Don't light anything. Walls are thin. If you snore, you sleep outside. Then she's gone. You step inside. It's basic. A small window. A pile of straw that might generously be called a bed. A chipped amphora of water in the corner. A curtain instead of a door. But blessedly, no drums, no singing, no goats. You settle down, rolling your shoulder blades against the wall like an exhausted turtle. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Your body protests in 43 different ways. You ignore them all. That's when you hear it. A horn in the distance. Low. Steady, purposeful. You freeze. Someone nearby murmurs, "The recruiters." Mainstream historical fact. The Roman army was always in need of warm bodies, especially during times of expansion or unrest. While Rome boasted a powerful core of citizen legionaries, they also recruited from the lower classes and provincial regions. Some volunteered for glory. Others were volunteered. You peek through the curtain and down the street. A line of torches winds its way through the dark like a snake of duty and bad luck. A man in bronze armor shouts a name from a scroll. Another holds up a tablet. They're going door to door. You retreat from the window like a rabbit from a thundercloud. You are not ready to become a Roman soldier. You've barely survived being a Roman pedestrian. You begin scanning the room. Hiding spots, 0. Escape routes, 1. If you consider the tiny window and a 2-story drop onto what looks like a pile of fish crates, not ideal. Then you remember something. Quirky tidbit. Certain jobs in Rome offered temporary protection from conscription. Teachers, scribes, entertainers, and temple attendants were occasionally exempt. If you can look like one of those things, maybe you'll be passed over. You grab a piece of half-burned scroll someone left behind, smear a little ash on your fingers, and sit cross-legged like someone in the middle of an intense literary debate with themselves. You even hold your mouth slightly open, as if preparing to recite poetry. You hear the footsteps. The creak of the stairs, a knock on the room next to yours, voices murmur. A short pause, another knock. Yours. You freeze. The curtain rustles. A guard pokes his head in, eyes you, looks at the scroll, frowns. "Literatus?" he asks. You nod slowly. very seriously. As if you're contemplating a translation of Homer that might change everything. The guard grunts. "Nihil prodest," he mutters. "Useless." Then, miraculously, he moves on. You wait. You don't breathe. You count to 100. Only after the horn fades into the night and the torchlight vanishes from the street do you allow your muscles to relax. You survive the Roman draft, just barely. You slump back onto the straw. It crunches like stale bread under your weight. You pull the tattered cloak over yourself, who knows where you got it now, and nestle into the corner. Outside, the sounds of Rome finally begin to fade. The last cart rumbles by. A distant cat screams at a window. Somewhere, someone's playing a reed flute softly. Not well, but quietly. Historians still argue whether Rome ever truly slept. Some say it pulsed 24/7 with noise, trade, and ritual. Others claim there were quiet corners like this, moments when the fire dimmed, the gods rested, and the people finally let go of their endless striving. You're in one of those corners now, and you let yourself drift, not into a deep sleep yet, but that half space where your thoughts blur and the city breathes around you. You don't know what tomorrow holds. Maybe you'll get your toga back. Maybe you'll get conscripted anyway. Maybe you'll accidentally marry a statue. You no longer care, because tonight you are safe. Not comfortable, not clean, but safe. And in ancient Rome, that's more than most can say. Your sleep is the kind that feels like sinking into warm honey, thick and undisturbed, until it isn't. You're woken not by alarm, but by something more Roman, the loud crash of a tipped-over amphora in the hallway, followed by a groggy voice shouting, "I said olive oil, not wine, you dolt!" You blink in the semi-darkness. A thread of morning light pushes through the slatted window, painting your dusty floor with lines of gold. Somewhere below, someone is already sweeping. You can smell bread baking, smoke curling from a nearby oven, and yes, someone sharpening something, a blade maybe. Possibly a cheese knife, or a much less charming kind of blade you stretch. Every part of you protests. Your muscles feel like they've been hammered by a team of enthusiastic blacksmiths. Your cloak has twisted itself into a knot around your leg, and your pillow, a suspiciously stiff sack of grain, now has an imprint of your ear forever etched into it. Still, you're alive, upright, unstabbed. You peer out the window. The street is already bustling. Vendors shouting, animals braying, someone yelling at a column as if it personally insulted them. A cart rolls past, carrying what appears to be 7 bundles of hay and 1 mildly annoyed goat. Today, you tell yourself you'll take it easy, and that's the first mistake. You step outside, and immediately a young boy thrusts a clay tablet into your hands. "You're summoned," he says, with the cheerful doom of someone who doesn't have to go. "Summoned where?" you ask. "To the Temple of Saturn," he says. For the census. You stare at him. Mainstream historical fact. Every 5 years, Roman citizens were required to participate in the census, conducted by elected officials called censors. It wasn't just a head count. It was a full bureaucratic audit. Your name, property, family, and social standing were all recorded, sorted, and judged. You try to hand the tablet back. The boy has already vanished into the alley. You consider running, but you remember the recruiters. The last thing you want is to draw attention. So, begrudgingly, you limp toward the Forum Romanum, where Saturn's temple sits like a stone elder, impressive, solemn, and very much in favor of long lines. When you arrive, a crowd has already gathered. People murmur, fidget, adjust their togas, and try not to sweat on each other. A man behind you is practicing how to say modest landowner with just the right amount of false humility. A woman beside him is trying to calm her chicken, which may or may not be considered taxable property. You shuffle forward as the line inches into the temple. Marble columns rise overhead. The scent of incense is thick in the air, resinous, floral, with a top note of "please don't question my property claims." You clutch the tablet awkwardly, now slightly smudged from your sweaty fingers. The censor's assistant calls your name. Well, what sounds like a badly mangled version of it, and beckons you forward. You step up to a wide stone table where a stern man in a crisp white toga sits with 3 scribes. "Name?" he asks, not looking up. You give the best Latin approximation of your name you can manage. He frowns. "Origin? Gaul?" He nods, like that explains your accent and questionable hair. "Occupation?" You panic. "Scribe?" The scribe next to him raises an eyebrow and mutters. He's holding the tablet upside down. You flip it over. They sigh. "Property?" You smile faintly. "I have a goat?" They write something down. "Family? Not here." More writing. The censor finally looks at you. "Any crimes?" You pause. How to explain? Illegal fig handling, a nearly fatal toga incident, unlawful impersonation of a poet to dodge conscription, and technically stealing a room from a man who might not have even died yet. "No," you say. He narrows his eyes. "Sure?" You nod. There's a long pause, then, "Very well. Status provisional. Taxes assessed next year. Try not to die." You back away slowly. Quirky tidbit. The census determined more than just taxes. It also shaped your social class, voting rights, and eligibility for public office. A bad entry could mark you for life. A good one could be your golden ticket. Most people tried to game the system, underreport property, overstate honor, bribe the right scribe. Historians still argue how accurate the census ever truly was. Some claim it kept the empire efficient. Others call it ancient Rome's version of creative accounting, with extra laurel leaves. Back outside, you let out a long breath and lean against a column. The sun's higher now. Your name is officially recorded. You exist. You also might owe taxes on a goat you don't technically own. Progress. You wander the forum afterward, letting the noise wash over you. Debates at the rostra echo down the marble streets. A man preaches something about stoicism. Another sells bird omens. A vendor tries to convince you his garum is made from only the friendliest fish. You decline. Your stomach grumbles again, but you ignore it. You've had enough fermented sauce and accidental cheese for 1 week. Instead, you drift toward a quieter area of the forum, near a shaded portico where old men sip watered wine and pretend not to watch the younger ones spar in the training yard beyond. You sit beside a statue missing its nose and feel, for the first time since arriving, something like belonging. Not quite comfort, not quite safety, but recognition. You're dusty, poorly dressed, and absolutely winging it. But you've bathed, dined, labored, survived a gladiator match, dodged conscription, and passed the census. You're a part of Rome now. And Rome, whether it likes it or not, is a part of you. The shaded portico gives you a moment of stillness, a rare thing in Rome. You sit on the edge of a worn marble bench, tracing faint carvings on its surface with your finger, something about Neptune and an eel, while your legs dangle tiredly. You've officially been counted by the state, dodged the military draft, and narrowly avoided death by festival goat. You should feel triumphant. Instead, you're craving a nap and a life without surprise parades. A pair of older men nearby are deep in conversation, their voices low and rhythmic. You catch fragments: grain prices, barbarian raids, that senator's third wife. One of them has a beard like a shrubbery. The other is nibbling on what looks like a salted plum and side-eyeing everyone under the age of 30, including you. You smile politely and slide further into the shade. But Rome, as always, has other plans. A commotion begins near the end of the portico. At first, it's subtle. just the distant clatter of sandals. Then raised voices, a woman shouting. The unmistakable crack of wood splintering. The shrubbery-beard man sighs, like he knew this day would come. You sit up. A small crowd is forming. A cart has overturned in the middle of the road, spilling its contents across the street. Parchments, wax tablets, styluses, and one very angry man in a dyed blue toga, flailing his arms like he's conducting a furious orchestra. You edge closer, curious. Turns out the cart belonged to a scribal office, a mobile archive, essentially, delivering legal records to one of the magistrate's chambers. And now it's chaos. Documents lie scattered across the road. A pig is eating one. A child is drawing on another. A woman walks by, casually steps over a tablet, and mutters, "Typical." Mainstream historical fact. Rome ran on documentation. Everything was written down: births, marriages, property exchanges, court rulings, even temple expenses. Scribes or scribae were essential to the function of the empire. Some were slaves, others were freedmen, but they wielded enormous bureaucratic power. You don't know what possesses you, but you step forward and begin helping. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's habit. Maybe it's the fact that if you stand there too long, someone's going to hand you a fig. You scoop up a wax tablet and hand it back to the toga man, who mutters a stunned thanks. You collect more. Organize a few by stamp color. Redirect a small goat chewing on a contract, and suddenly, boom, you're useful. Can you read? Someone asks. You hesitate. Sort of? Close enough. They hand you a stack and point toward a wooden table now serving as an impromptu desk. Before you know it, you're surrounded by scrolls, tablets, and a small pot of ink. You're recording statements, copying inventory, transcribing witness names, names that all somehow sound like vegetables. You're now a part-time bureaucrat. Quirky tidbit. Rome was full of odd, hyper-specific job titles in its bureaucracy. Ab epistulis, letter writer, a rationibus, accountant, curator, aquarum, water overseer. There were even officials whose job it was to count how many urns were delivered to temples each month. Efficiency met absurdity in perfect Latin form. You work for hours. People come and go. A judge stops by. A donkey relieves itself exactly where you were sitting earlier. A scribe with a stylus behind each ear shows you how to make your wax strokes neater. You nod like you're taking notes instead of wondering how you ended up here. At some point, the sun dips behind a building and throws the whole street into golden shadow. You look up. Your fingers are stained with ink. Your back hurts. You have 3 small scroll fragments stuck to your elbow, but no one's yelling. No one's dying. And you haven't tripped over anything in at least 2 hours. You might be thriving. Someone hands you a crust of barley bread and a bit of dried apple. It's the best thing you've tasted all day. You're decent at this, the blue toga man says. We're always short on hands. Come back tomorrow. You don't answer. Not because you don't want to, but because you realize you actually do want to. The thought of a job that doesn't involve bricks, goats, or gladiators, kind of appealing. Still, you're not about to commit to a career in ancient Roman admin just yet. Maybe, you say, chewing thoughtfully. He shrugs. You'll be back. Rome has a way of pulling people into scroll work. He's not wrong. You step away from the desk as the team begins packing up what's left. A man carefully places scrolls into leather satchels like they're precious eggs. Another blows out a lamp. The day is fading, and the cool night air creeps between the stones. You wander off again, this time toward the Palatine Hill, not for politics or sightseeing, but just for the view. You climb slowly, past rustling pines and ivy-choked statues, until you reach a quiet terrace overlooking the city. There it is, Rome, not the dramatic Rome from school books, not the sanitized Rome from frescoes. The real Rome. A city of stinking latrines and sun-baked stones, of laughter and theft, of figs and fights and badly played flutes. A city you absolutely weren't ready for, but one that somehow hasn't destroyed you yet. Below, fires glow in clay ovens. Children laugh. A temple bell rings. You smile. You're still alive. You're probably still doomed, but you've got tomorrow. And in Rome, that's saying something. You linger on the Palatine Hill until the last streak of sunset fades from the sky, painting the city below in rich blues and flickering torchlight. The Forum glows faintly like a constellation made of sandstone and ambition. Somewhere, a temple bell tolls again, slow, resonant, final. It's time to find a place to sleep. Again. This time, you're not looking for mystery cloaks or flea-filled straw. You've heard whispers about a cheap rooming house near the Tiber. Simple but safe, someone said. Fewer rats than average, they added. At this point, that sounds like luxury. You shuffle down the slope of the hill, sandals flapping, knees creaking. You pass a patrician's villa just as a slave lights a line of oil lamps on the outer wall. The scent of roasted meat drifts through a side window. Somewhere behind it, a man is loudly quoting Virgil to a dog. You do not belong here. You pick up your pace. By the time you reach the river, the moon has risen fully, throwing silver ribbons across the rippling water. The street is quieter here. Fewer carts, more shadows. You move carefully, passing stacks of amphorae, docked barges, and a fishmonger asleep beside a bucket of suspicious eels. Then you find it, a squat two-story building made of cracked plaster and leaning beams. A crooked wooden sign swings gently above the door. It reads, optimistically, Domus Somni, House of Sleep. You push open the door. Inside, a bored-looking man sits behind a counter carved from an old wagon axle. He gestures without speaking to a narrow staircase. You nod, hand him the last of your coins, and he tosses you a brass key. It lands in your palm like a small, sarcastic anvil. Your room is upstairs. Small, low ceiling, one oil lamp. A cot made of rope and something you hope is hay, but it's dry. It's private. It smells faintly of lavender, or possibly someone else's socks. You sit on the edge of the cot and let out a long, crumpled breath. You did it. You survived another full day in Rome. Mainstream historical fact. In ancient Rome, insomnia was a well-known complaint. Wealthy citizens had specific rituals. Perfumed pillows, warm baths, herbal drinks. The poor, they had noise, bedbugs, and hopes that tomorrow would be slightly less terrible. Sound familiar? You lie down. The rope bed groans. You pull a thin linen cloth over yourself and listen to the distant sounds of the river. The occasional splash, the rhythmic creak of dock ropes, the bark of a watchdog somewhere far off. Your brain, however, has no intention of shutting down. It begins reviewing your day like an anxious librarian. The goat, the bear, the dinner party, the accidental job, the census, the wine-soaked parade, the increasingly judgmental pigeon that watched you mess up brickwork this morning. You roll onto your side. The straw crunches. Something tiny scampers in the corner. You pretend not to notice. Quirky tidbit. Romans believed certain gods guarded sleep, like Somnus, god of slumber, and Morpheus, who shaped dreams. Offerings were sometimes left near beds, tiny figurines, sprigs of herbs, even crusts of honey bread. You have none of these. Just a pocket fig that now resembles a fossil. You close your eyes. You try breathing like the priestesses at the Temple of Vesta, slow, deep, focused. It helps for about 4 seconds, then the door creaks open. You bolt upright, heart thudding, but it's just the innkeeper. He leans in, mutters, You forgot your water, and places a chipped clay cup on the floor. Then he's gone. The cup is warm. You sip it anyway. It tastes like boiled pottery and dust, but somehow it calms you. You lie back down. This time, you start to drift. You dream faintly of laurel crowns and floating bricks, of being chased through a library by a man dressed as Mars, of sneezing on a senator and being crowned emperor. Somewhere in your dream, a goat winks at you. You're too tired to care. Historians still argue whether Roman life was chaotic or merely constant, a river of rituals, smells, sounds, crises, and routines. You now understand that it was both wild and rigid, brutal and beautiful, sacred and stupid. And you, somehow, are part of it. As sleep finally drapes itself over your tired limbs, you accept a quiet, ridiculous truth. You still don't know how to wear a toga. You don't know why the fig vendor keeps finding you. You don't know if you'll be here tomorrow, or conscripted, or mistaken for a demigod and tossed in the Tiber. But none of it matters now. Because for tonight, at least, you have a cot, a roof, and a little sliver of peace. You're not from here, but you made it through the day. You wake with the distinct feeling that you've been sleeping on a basket of onions. Your back cracks in 3 places as you sit up, and your tongue feels like it's been dipped in terracotta. The air in the room is stale, equal parts rope fiber, warm dust, and something that can only be described as historically damp. You stretch slowly, carefully, and try to remember what century you're in. Outside, the sky is just beginning to turn gold and Rome is already alive. You hear footsteps on the cobblestones, distant bell rings from a temple, and because it's your life now, someone yelling about figs. You decide today is a low-effort day. No bathhouses, no parades, no accidental involvement in crime or paperwork. You'll just explore quietly, anonymously. Like a background character in someone else's fresco. After a splash of water to the face and a quick attempt to flatten your hair using the reflection in your empty cup, you shuffle downstairs. The innkeeper grunts hello and points you toward a bowl of stale bread and a suspicious-looking fig. You take the bread, politely ignore the fig, you step into the street and begin to wander. Past vendors setting up shop, past a girl trying to balance 4 amphorae on a cart pulled by a mule with a distinct limp, past a man attempting to lecture a cat about stoicism. The cat looks unimpressed. You follow your feet until the buildings grow older, the streets narrower, and the crowds thinner. You've stumbled into one of Rome's older quarters, where temples are tucked between workshops and forgotten statues lean at artistic angles in alleyways. Here, time moves a little slower. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Rome wasn't one uniform city. It was a mosaic of districts, from the posh villas of the Palatine Hill to the gritty tenements of the Subura. Each had its own rhythm, its own gods, its own gossip. In this quieter part of town, you find something unexpected. A school. You linger near the doorway, listening. Inside, children chant Latin conjugations in bored unison. A teacher, a man with the weary face of someone who once dreamed of being a senator, paces in front of them, waving a wax tablet like a sword. A child sneezes. Another drops a stylus. The teacher sighs so hard his sandals scuff backward. You grin. Because for all of Rome's chaos, some things, like school mornings, are exactly the same across millennia. Someone calls out to you. A man standing nearby, dressed in a tunic with ink stains and eyes that have definitely watched multiple scrolls catch fire. "You literate?" he asks. You pause. This again. Sort of? Come on then. He leads you around the corner to a shaded courtyard filled with scrolls, low benches, and half-asleep cats. "Welcome to a librarium," an early form of public library, or more accurately, a storage room for the elite's book collection, supervised by men too bitter to teach and too clever to dig ditches. He gestures at a stack of scrolls. Help me sort. By subject, or length, or smell. I don't care anymore. You sit, you sort. You do your best to distinguish military history from romantic poetry based on whether the parchment has been annotated angrily or tearfully. Quirky tidbit. Roman libraries were often private collections in homes or temples. The idea of public lending libraries was still forming, but the elite prided themselves on accumulating texts, even if they never read them. Some simply bought scrolls as status symbols. Others hired slaves called librarii to organize them. You spend an hour there. Then 2. You read a scrap of a letter from someone named Gaius, apologizing for a stolen chicken. You find a poem titled Ode to My Favorite Sandal. You accidentally sneeze on a scroll labeled Civic Tax Records, year 708 AUC, and hope no one noticed. The man eventually nods at you, grunts, "Not bad," and offers you a piece of flatbread smeared with honey. You accept. This is your life now. Unofficial scribe, reluctant librarian, frequent fig avoider. As you leave, the man shouts, "Come back tomorrow if you don't get conscripted." You wave. You wander again through the shaded arches and crumbling columns of a city that never seems to stop rebuilding itself. You pass a shrine to Mercury and leave a pebble at the base. You pass a fountain where 2 women are washing tunics and gossiping about a senator's affair with a street musician. You pass a bakery where the smell of warm, charred bread makes your stomach rumble. You buy a loaf and sit on the edge of a fountain, pulling off pieces slowly. A boy walks past and asks if you're from Parthia. You shake your head. He nods like that explains everything, then skips away. You stare at the water. You've been in Rome for what, 2 days? 3? Time blurs here. Everything is loud and bright and dusty and alive. And yet you're adjusting. You know how to wrap a cloak without tripping, mostly. You know to keep coins in your second pouch to avoid pickpockets. You know where not to step near the forum if it's just rained. You know which temple sells sweet wine under the table if you ask for it as sun syrup. You are astonishingly beginning to adapt. Historians still argue whether foreigners ever truly fit into Roman life. Some say they were always outsiders. Others point to thriving immigrant communities, rising freedmen, even emperors of provincial birth. You're somewhere in between, a stranger, but one who's starting to know the shortcuts. The sun climbs higher. You finish your bread. Wipe your hands on your cloak. Stand. You could go back to the rooming house. You could nap. You could try to make your scroll work job official, but instead you start walking again because there's more Rome out there. And somehow you're not done with it yet. By midday, the streets have grown hotter, noisier, and somehow even more fragrant in a way that makes you question the long-term impact of anything fermenting in a clay jar. Still, you're out there, one step at a time, dodging carts and philosophical debates being shouted from balconies. You find yourself moving toward the Campo Marzio, or Field of Mars, a vast open area used for everything from military training to public ceremonies and random gatherings of people who like shouting near large statues. You weren't aiming for it exactly. Rome just sort of nudges you places. One moment you're avoiding a street musician's overly enthusiastic attempt at a panpipe solo. The next you're standing in a dusty field surrounded by half-naked men doing calisthenics with alarming intensity. Mainstream historical fact. The Field of Mars was a central hub in ancient Rome. Originally dedicated to Mars, the god of war, it evolved into a space for athletic contests, militia drills, and later, massive architectural projects. But during the Republic, it was like Central Park. If Central Park was constantly yelling and covered in sweaty gladiator hopefuls, someone mistakes you for a participant. Before you can protest, a young man thrusts a wooden practice sword into your hands. It's heavy. Awkward, definitely not shaped like anything you've seen in a museum gift shop. A circle of men forms around a chalked-off patch of ground. You're in it, no escape. You're new, one of them says, grinning. Deeply, you reply. You'll do fine, another offers. Just don't lock your knees or cry. You try to nod. Your cloak slips off one shoulder. Your sandals are already protesting. The instructor, a wiry man with the neck of a bull and the voice of a forge, barks commands. You are told to face your opponent, hold your ground, and look less terrified. All difficult. Your opponent is a teenage boy with biceps like figs stuffed in linen. He's grinning in a way that suggests this is his version of foreplay. The fight begins. You immediately swing too early, trip over your own feet, and fall face first into the dirt. The crowd groans in second-hand embarrassment. Your opponent helps you up and pats your shoulder like a disappointed uncle. Still, the match continues. You parry once. Poorly, you duck by accident, but it works. You even manage a weak swing that taps your opponent on the arm. He gasps dramatically and falls backward like you just launched a divine thunderbolt. The crowd cheers. You bow. You mean to look humble, but you mostly look dizzy. Quirky tidbit. Romans adored mock combat. Not just in arenas, but in training fields, festivals, and even dinner parties. Some upper-class Romans hosted private sparring matches to show off their athletic guests. Nothing said wealth like two shirtless men trying to knock each other over next to your wine cooler. The instructor claps. You've got enthusiasm and terrible footwork. Thanks, you wheeze. You're invited to join the next round. You decline, politely, then firmly. Then, while limping away, your sandals are full of dust, your tunic has a rip at the shoulder, and you may have swallowed some gravel. You make it to the edge of the field and collapse beside a statue of Mars with one arm missing and a pigeon nesting in his helmet. The irony is not lost on you. A vendor appears as if summoned by sweat, offering mulsum, a chilled mixture of wine and honey. You buy a cup. It tastes like fermented summer. You drink it faster than you mean to. Around you, the field of Mars keeps buzzing. Youths wrestling in sand pits, children racing in circles, old men debating whether Cicero could beat Socrates in a fist fight. There's laughter, shouting, someone trying to sell amulets carved from authentic Trojan horse hoof. You do not ask questions. And for the first time in days, no one is demanding anything of you. You're not hauling bricks. You're not dodging lions. You're not trying to pretend you understand a poem about pickled olives. You're just sitting, drinking honey wine in the breeze, watching the world move. Historians still argue whether leisure in Rome was truly restful or just another kind of performance. Even relaxing could be competitive. Who had the best villa, the longest nap, the most elegant way to recline while being fanned? But here, now, with sweat drying on your neck and bees ignoring you for more interesting targets, it feels real. You lean back and stare up at the clouds. They float lazily over the city, ignoring the marble, the fires, the noise. One looks vaguely like a trident, another like a chicken. The third is clearly Jupiter's nose. You doze a little, just a little. Long enough for the shadow to shift, for the wine to sink into your bones, and for a soft voice to wake you with a gentle nudge. It's the mulsum vendor again. Careful, he says. Too much sun, and you'll wake up in the Tiber. You nod, rub your eyes, and thank him. He hands you a second cup, this one on the house, and walks away. You sip. It tastes like gold. You stay until the sun dips low and the shadows of the columns stretch long and strange across the dust. You know you should head back. But not yet. The field of Mars may have bruised your pride and strained a tendon, but it gave you a gift no Roman coin could buy. A few quiet hours. And in this city, that's rarer than a clean latrine, you finally peel yourself off the sun-warmed stone as dusk begins to settle in, stretching shadows across the field of Mars. Your arms ache pleasantly from the sparring match, and your sandals have acquired a new layer of dust. But for once, you feel balanced, slightly bruised, yes, but not panicked. A Roman miracle. You wander back through the maze of streets, slower now. There's no rush, just a gentle urge to see what the city looks like as it begins to yawn and roll towards sleep. Well, Roman sleep, which means slightly less shouting and only the occasional traveling flute solo. Somewhere near the Forum Boarium, you stumble onto something unexpected. A crowd gathered around a low platform, illuminated by torchlight and ringed with linen sheets to give it the illusion of walls. There's music, harps, soft drum taps, and the low hum of polite conversation. You've walked into a street theater. Mainstream historical fact. Rome had all kinds of performances, from grand productions in dedicated amphitheaters to spontaneous open-air plays called fabulae, atellanae, or mimes, often lewd, political, or absurd. Evenings often saw these impromptu stages pop up in public squares, offering everything from tragedies to slapstick comedy. And the best part, they were free. You stand at the edge of the gathering. A boy offers you a stool for a single coin. You decline and sit on a nearby barrel instead. The crowd leans in as two actors take the stage, each wearing exaggerated masks, one frowning in eternal disapproval, the other grinning like he's had too much of Bacchus's finest. The performance begins. A comedy by the looks of it. A classic tale of mistaken identity, overbearing parents, conniving slaves, and at least one character pretending to be a god. The Latin flies fast and silly, but even you, armed with only the vocabulary of a sleepy tourist and some wild gesturing, can follow the gist. A man in an oversized toga stumbles dramatically. The audience howls. A woman disguised as a soldier tries to seduce another woman's maid. There's a fake sword, a fart joke, and someone falls off the stage into a basket of bread. It's completely ridiculous. You love it. A dog barks in time with the music. Someone behind you starts juggling dried figs. The crowd is mostly locals, market vendors, dock workers, children sitting cross-legged and sticky with honey. Nobody's too important to laugh. Quirky tidbit, Roman mimes weren't silent like their modern cousins. They talked, sang, cursed, and were often considered scandalous. So much so that some emperors banned certain troops for mocking the state too effectively, but people adored them. They were satire wrapped in slapstick. Ancient stand-up meets improv chaos. The show ends with a song. The entire cast dances in a circle while one actor, pretending to be Mercury, passes out fake coins. One lands in your lap. It's wood, painted gold, with a carved smiley face. You pocket it. A keepsake from the night, Rome remembered how to be silly. As the crowd begins to disperse, someone taps your shoulder. It's a girl selling roasted chickpeas. You hand her a coin. She dumps a warm bundle into your palm and disappears into the shadows like a snack-bearing phantom. You walk again, munching absently. The chickpeas are smoky, salty, oddly sweet. The kind of flavor that makes you remember you haven't had a proper meal since... you honestly can't remember when. But it's fine. Because tonight, you're feeding on something different. Quiet joy. You round a corner and find yourself in a small courtyard lit by hanging lanterns. A fountain bubbles softly in the center. An old man plays a tune on a flute. Soft, meandering, more lullaby than concert. A few people lounge nearby, half listening. A couple leans close together. A woman pets a sleepy cat with one hand and holds a plum in the other. You sit on the fountain's edge and listen. You don't talk. You don't need to. For once, no one's trying to sell you anything, draft you, bless you, or feed you another fig. You're just a quiet figure in the tapestry of this city's night. Historians still debate whether ancient Rome ever had a true evening culture. Was it a city of early risers and early sleepers, or did the nights carry their own rhythms? Private dinners, illicit affairs, moonlit music? Based on the scene in front of you, you'd argue the latter. You close your eyes. Let the music settle into your bones. Let the city breathe around you. Eventually, the lanterns begin to dim. People rise and stretch. The fountain trickles on, uncaring. You rise too. Walk slowly. Your feet know the way now. Down alleys where the stone still holds the day's heat. Past the bakery, where a new loaf is already baking for tomorrow's trade. Through the street where the pigeon still guards its favorite statue. Back at the rooming house, you climb the stairs with the weariness of someone who has truly earned every ache. Your room greets you like an old friend. Lumpy, dim, slightly too warm. You wash your hands in the little basin, watching the dust swirl away. The oil lamp flickers once, then steadies. You lie down. The fake coin in your pocket presses gently against your hip. You smile, because today you didn't just survive Rome, you laughed with it. And that might be the best thing you've done since you arrived. You wake before the sun, not because anything's wrong, but because somehow your body has surrendered to Rome's rhythm. The sounds of a city just beginning to stir drift in from the cracked window. Sandals slapping on wet stone, a vendor coughing awake, and the clatter of amphorae being shifted somewhere down the block. You lie still for a moment, tucked into your cloak, your limbs stiff from the barrel you apparently used as a pillow. Your mouth is dry, your legs ache, one of your knees has betrayed you entirely. But there's something else too, something absurdly unfamiliar and wonderful. You feel calm. No explosions, no parades. No fig attacks. Yet. You stand, stretch, and splash your face with water from the chipped basin, which has begun developing its own personality. The cloth you've been using as a towel now smells like a blend of smoke, sweat, and misplaced optimism, but it still gets the job done. You step out into the cool morning air. The city isn't fully awake, but it's twitching. There's a hush that only exists for about 35 Roman seconds, before the shouting, the goats, and the brawls over stale garum return in full force. Today you decide you're doing nothing, or at least, nothing important. You meander toward the Aventine Hill, one of Rome's quieter corners. It's a bit removed from the frenzy of the Forum and bathhouses, known more for temples, gardens, and people who enjoy arguing about grain laws over wine. You pass a woman sweeping her doorstep, a baker placing loaves onto a wooden plank, and a child arguing with a goose. You nod at the goose. It hisses. You pretend it didn't. Mainstream historical fact. The Aventine was home to both wealthy villas and working-class neighborhoods. It had temples to obscure gods, leafy groves, and rumors of secret societies. It was the kind of place where senators and dock workers might live on the same street, just separated by a wall, a column, and about 30,000 sesterces. You climb a winding path lined with cypress trees, each one swaying gently in the early breeze. At the top, the city stretches out before you like a cracked marble map. Domes, towers, smoke trails, and the odd pigeon flying at a 45-degree angle. You find a small bench carved from stone and sit. No one bothers you. No one offers you fermented cheese. No one challenges you to a duel disguised as poetry. You sip from a clay flask you refilled at the fountain. Lukewarm water, slightly mineral, but blissfully fig-free. A small group of people gathers nearby beneath a shady portico. They're discussing dreams. Literally, one man shares a tale of flying above Rome. A woman says she saw her dead uncle handing her a fish wrapped in gold. A teenager claims she turned into a laurel tree and beat Jupiter in a foot race. You lean closer. Turns out, they're part of a dream interpretation group. Every week, they meet to unravel the night's visions using the teachings of Artemidorus, the dream expert of the day. They invite you to join. You agree immediately. Quirky tidbit. Romans believed dreams were messages from the gods, or sometimes just the result of eating too much goat meat before bed. Books of dream interpretation were common, and professional dream readers could be found in temples or public markets. Some emperors made decisions based on dreams. Others blamed them for their terrible choices. You share your own recent dream, chasing a talking scroll through a burning basilica while being pelted with figs by men dressed as senators. There's a long pause. The dream leader nods solemnly. Clearly, you fear paperwork. You nod, humbled by her insight. You spend the next hour sipping diluted wine and listening to people talk about what their brains invented overnight. It's weird. It's peaceful. It's surprisingly comforting. You leave with a smile and a small sprig of rosemary someone tucks behind your ear to ward off nightmares and pigeons. Useful. You continue wandering, down a leafy path, past a temple devoted to Ceres, goddess of agriculture, where a priest is lecturing a group of half-asleep children on the importance of barley. One child sneaks a plum, another draws a snail on the temple wall. You pass a small garden, its fence woven from branches, where a woman sings to her cabbages. You tiptoe past. At the far end of the hill, you stumble across something you didn't expect. A narrow archway leading to a shaded terrace. Beyond it, a keyhole. Not a metaphor, but an actual keyhole, set into an old bronze door flanked by overgrown ivy. You peek through it, and there it is, a perfect frame view of St. Peter's Basilica, centuries ahead of its official construction, but already taking shape in whispered blueprints and distant foundations. For now, it's a glimpse of future greatness, something you probably weren't meant to see. You blink, lean back, and stare at the door. You feel weirdly lucky, or maybe just sun-touched, or possibly dehydrated. Still, you sit on the steps, beside the keyhole for a while, letting the breeze wash over your tired limbs. Below, Rome stretches and groans into afternoon. You watch a column of birds curl through the sky like spilled ink, shifting shape and sound. Historians still argue whether the Romans ever saw themselves as part of something larger than their moment. Did they think about legacy, about how future generations might stand in their footsteps, dreaming through the same dust? You don't know, but you do. And as you sit there, feet dangling, eyes full of city, you feel the strange, overwhelming joy of belonging to something enormous, broken, brilliant, and alive. You don't do anything for the next hour, and it's the best thing you've done all day. You eventually rise from the Aventine terrace, your joints creaking like badly oiled door hinges. The city below is shifting again, buzzing louder now, stirred by late afternoon errands, temple bells, and whatever emergency requires 7 men to sprint while carrying a very large cheese. You descend slowly, stopping briefly to wave goodbye to the goose, still angry, and return the rosemary sprig to its rightful temple steps. You're not entirely sure which god appreciates herbs behind the ear, but it's better not to risk offending any of them. With your stomach rumbling and your sandals scraping, you follow the smell of roasting lentils and something vaguely cinnamon-like toward one of Rome's busier crossroads. Not the Forum, it's too ceremonial at this hour, but a tangle of side streets known more for taverns and tabernae than triumphal arches. You're searching for food, and what you find is Theater. Not the kind with masks and stages. The kind with half-drunk citizens shouting across smoky rooms, poets scribbling on wax tablets while muttering angrily, and vendors arguing with bakers about whose olives are less offensive. You pick a tavern with a painted sign featuring a chicken holding a wine cup. Bold choice. Inside, the air is thick with laughter, charcoal smoke, and something bubbling in a clay pot that smells suspiciously like ambition. A boy waves you to an empty stool between a bricklayer and a man arguing with his own sandals. You sit. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Roman taverns, or popinae, were working-class watering holes where citizens ate, drank, debated, flirted, and sometimes plotted minor revolts. They were noisy, vital places, looked down upon by the elite, but beloved by those who preferred their wine unwatered and their arguments unfiltered. You order something that sounds vaguely edible: lentil stew with pine nuts, a wedge of barley bread, and a cup of posca, that tangy vinegar and water concoction Roman soldiers swore by. The stew is thick, earthy, and better than it looks. The bread is hard enough to be weaponized. The posca? It tastes like someone tried to pickle a headache, but you drink it anyway because hydration is hydration. The man next to you offers a toothless grin and slaps your back. First time, you nod. Don't touch the oysters. Duly noted. The room swells with voices. A group in the corner plays knucklebones. A girl near the hearth sings a song about Neptune losing his trident in a tavern bet. The ceiling beams creak with every gust of wind from the street. Quirky tidbit. Romans often ate out, especially the poor. Homes rarely had full kitchens, so taverns, snack stalls, thermopolia, and communal ovens formed the backbone of daily food culture. Some places even offered takeout. Your stew might come wrapped in cabbage leaves, your dessert tucked in a fig skin. As you finish the last bite, the tavern door slams open, and a man bursts in holding a painted mask. "Actors needed," he shouts. Everyone groans. 3 lines, 1 entrance, no goats this time. You don't know what any of that means. You sip your posca. Eventually the chaos settles. People drift out. The tavern boy begins sweeping up crumbs and questionable coins. You thank him and leave a small tip, the wooden mercury coin from the other night. He grins. Outside, the air is cooler now. The sky is going indigo. And as you turn the corner toward your room, you're pulled, not by smell, not by sound, but by something far rarer in Rome: stillness. A small courtyard lies open, lanterns flickering on low posts, a pool in the center reflecting the first stars. No crowd, no pigeons. Just silence. You sit on the edge of the fountain, half expecting someone to leap out and challenge you to a debate about grain tariffs, but no one does. Historians still debate whether Romans experienced what we'd call solitude. Privacy was rare, homes crowded, lives public. But perhaps in places like this, in moments like this, they carved it out for themselves. You stare into the water. Your reflection stares back, dirtier than yesterday, a bit more sunburned, eyes less wide with panic, maybe even a little proud. You've eaten, survived 2 surprise performances, befriended a tavern, and remembered to not touch the oysters. You are, for better or worse, becoming a local. You lean back. Watch the sky. Trace the first star with your finger. It flickers in perfect time with the ripples on the water. And for a rare Roman moment, everything holds still. No drums, no shouts. No fig-related crimes, just breath, just stone. Just you. You rise from the fountain slowly, joints popping like overused abacuses, and make your way back toward the rooming house. The city is shedding its final layers of day. Torches lighting, cats reclaiming windowsills, street musicians switching from energetic flutes to melancholy lyres. A market vendor snores beneath his own table, surrounded by wilting turnips. You reach your little room, blessedly unchanged, and collapse onto the rope bed. For a few moments, you just lie there, arms flopped out, listening to the gentle creak of the beams above you and the occasional suspicious rustling in the wall. Tomorrow will be your 5th day in Rome. You should have been trampled by oxen, poisoned by fish sauce, or swept into a political scandal by now. Yet somehow you persist. Tonight you feel contemplative. Maybe it's the lentils. Maybe it's the faint scent of rosemary still clinging to your cloak. Either way, your mind wanders, not to the temples or taverns, but to the people. Because Rome, for all its marble and monuments, is really just people doing their best in the world's most chaotic stage play. You think of the bricklayer who sneezes into his trowel, the tavern girl who sang about Neptune, the boy who sold you stale bread with the confidence of a seasoned con artist, the librarian who sighed like an emperor denied cake, and of course, the goat. Mainstream historical fact. The population of Imperial Rome is estimated to have reached over 1 million people, making it the largest city in the ancient world. It was a swirling mass of citizens, slaves, freedmen, immigrants, traders, travelers, and opportunists, all jostling for survival and shade. The social structure was rigid, but daily life was not. Your neighbor might be a retired gladiator, your laundress could be a former priestess, your baker might double as a comedian. Everyone has 2 jobs, 4 secrets, and an opinion about the emperor. You roll onto your side, facing the cracked plaster wall, and remember the old man who swore he saw a mermaid in the Tiber. The woman who claimed her bread could cure heartbreak. The teenage dream interpreter who looked you dead in the eye and said, "You've been chased by too many scrolls." She wasn't wrong. Quirky tidbit. Romans were deeply superstitious, and their daily rituals were full of minor gods and spirits. Lares, Penates, Genius Loci. Every hearth, doorway, fountain, and crossroad had its divine overseer. Most homes had a small household shrine, often with figurines of protective spirits or ancestors. Even taverns had lucky corners and sacred cracks in the wall. You realize, with a strange kind of peace, that your room is not haunted, which in this city might be the highest compliment a building can earn. There's something cozy about the idea that 1 million people are falling asleep above, below, and around you, some in silk sheets, some on rooftops, some in the arms of lovers, others under carts, or beside half-finished statues of Hercules, all dreaming, all hoping for fewer figs tomorrow. Historians still argue whether daily Roman life was brutal survival or vibrant community. You suspect it was both, depending on where you stood, how much you owned, and whether your sandals matched your tunic. You're still broke, and you've forgotten to do laundry for at least 3 eras, but somehow, you've found community here. A rotating cast of unpredictable lunatics who offer chickpeas, insults, and advice in equal measure. You close your eyes. The wind shifts outside. You hear the rustle of someone sweeping a courtyard, the soft clink of amphorae being stacked, a dog barking at a very confident cat. You are inexplicably content. You think about tomorrow, about possibly returning to the library, or visiting the Temple of Minerva, or seeing if that street theater troupe ever did find their goat. There are possibilities. And that, in Rome, is everything. Because here, even exhaustion feels heroic. Every bruise comes with a story. Every cheap meal is a feast if eaten outside a riot. Every nap is earned. Every escape a triumph. Every half smile from a passing stranger, a reminder that you're still standing. You tuck your cloak tighter around you. Let the quiet settle. Let the world outside your shutters blur into shadows and torchlight. And before your thoughts spiral any further, before you remember you still owe the innkeeper 1 coin and possibly an apology, you drift. Not into dreams this time, but into something gentler. A kind of earned silence. A city-sized exhale. Rome sleeps, and finally so do you. Your eyes flutter open to a strange stillness. Not silence, Rome doesn't do silence, but a kind of muffled hush, like the city's draped in linen. The usual dawn chorus of fruit vendors, stray dogs, and philosophical chickens is absent. Even the goat seems to be sleeping in. You rise slowly, limbs reluctant, back sounding like a Roman aqueduct with plumbing problems. There's a heaviness to the air, a kind of dusty suspense, as if the city is holding its breath. Then you hear it, a single trumpet note, far away, low and slow, echoing through the alleyways like a warning wrapped in brass. You freeze, not because you understand it, but because everyone else does. Outside, people are already on the move. Not running, not shouting, just walking quietly, purposefully, toward the main road. You follow. At the edge of the street, a crowd forms, old men with arms crossed. Women with baskets held still. Children standing on bricks to see better. You elbow your way forward until you spot it. A small military procession coming into view. Mainstream historical fact. In ancient Rome, public ceremonies often accompanied the return of soldiers, especially after campaigns abroad. But not all were triumphant parades with laurel wreaths and golden chariots. Some were simple affairs, solemn, political, or deeply local. This one looks modest. No elephants, no winged helmets. Just a line of dusty soldiers, marching 2 by 2, followed by a cart bearing wooden boxes draped in cloth. People murmur. A woman beside you whispers, "Syria." You don't ask. You just watch. Some salute, others bow their heads. A boy throws a sprig of myrtle into the road. The cart passes. You feel the vibration of its wheels in your feet. You think about the man at the bathhouse who spoke of his brother, about the librarian who once sighed, "Everyone knows someone in the army," about the actor who wore armor too well for it to be fake. Quirky tidbit: Roman military service was more than a job. It was a binding contract, often 20 years long, especially for non-citizens who hoped to earn Roman citizenship. Soldiers returned home not just with scars and pay, but stories, souvenirs, and sometimes gods from other lands. Their influence shaped the city more than statues ever could. The procession disappears around a corner. Life resumes, but not as quickly as before. People linger. Even the pigeons seem subdued. You wander away, feet unsure of where they're heading, until you find yourself at the edge of the Tiber River. The water is sluggish today, murky and slow, like the city's thoughts made visible. You sit beneath an olive tree, watching reeds sway in the breeze. A fisherman nearby hums an old tune as he casts his net. His boat, tied to a mossy rock, bobs lazily. He glances at you once, then returns to his rhythm. Cast. Pause, pull, repeat. You ask if the fish are biting. He shrugs. They're always biting. Just not here. You smile. It's a good answer. Historians still argue whether the Roman Tiber was more lifeline or nuisance. It fed trade, powered mills, delivered fresh water, but also flooded, stank, and occasionally coughed up crocodiles, or so the tavern tales go. It was both gift and threat, just like Rome. You lie back on the grass, watching clouds pass like toga-clad senators bickering across the sky. There's one shaped like a trireme, another like a laurel wreath. A third is either a goat or Jupiter, depending on the angle. The fisherman hums again. You let your thoughts drift. You think about the temples you haven't visited, the gardens you haven't wandered, the plays you might still see if the goat ever cooperates. You think about how, somehow, this mad, noisy, magnificent city has not destroyed you. Not yet, not today, and maybe, just maybe, you're starting to love it for that. Even its chaos, its unpredictability, its insistence that you pay attention or risk being run over by a cart full of peacocks. Because Rome doesn't whisper, it shouts, it sings. It clatters, it survives, and in some small, accidental way, you're part of that now. You hear bells ring in the distance, a temple, a signal. Someone selling onions? It doesn't matter. You rise. Brush the grass from your cloak. Thank the fisherman, who offers a lazy salute, and begin the slow walk home. Wherever that is now, you return to the rooming house just as the last blush of daylight retreats behind the hills, the sky melting into layers of bronze and deep lavender. Rome, in this hour, is not asleep, but it's quieter. The chaos softens. The city doesn't shout anymore. It murmurs. You climb the stairs. No one is in the hallway. Even the innkeeper is missing from his usual perch behind the creaking counter. You let yourself in. Your room is still a room. That same wonky cot, the same olive oil lamp flickering on the shelf, the same cracked basin where the water now smells faintly of parsley. And yet it feels different, like something has settled. You sit down and let your body rest for a moment before unfastening your sandals and placing them carefully at the foot of the bed. You've learned to do that. Rome has a way of teaching through repetition and discomfort. Then, for reasons you can't quite explain, you open the small cloth bundle you've been carrying. Inside, bits and pieces from your days here. A wooden coin, a fig stone shaped like a heart, a chipped amphora shard with someone's scratched initials, the sprig of rosemary you meant to leave behind, and, somehow, a single knuckle bone. You don't know where that one came from. You smile. You set them gently on the windowsill, trophies of survival. Mainstream historical fact: Romans were deeply sentimental collectors. Soldiers wore charms from home. Widows kept wax masks of their loved ones. Even children wore protective amulets from birth. Memory and meaning lived in the smallest things, in tokens, not just temples. Outside, a cat yowls half-heartedly at the moon. Somewhere nearby, a drunk man is reciting Ovid with unearned confidence, and down the alley, someone strums a soft tune on a lyre. You blow out the lamp. The darkness is not complete. There's enough moonlight to make the cracked ceiling look like a map, a place you've traced for 4 days now. And then the realization hits you gently. Tomorrow will be your 5th day in Rome, and you are, despite everything, still here. You wake in the small hours, long before dawn, not startled, not cold. Just aware. The kind of awareness that comes when the body has finally rested enough to simply be, not perform, not dodge, not survive, just exist. Outside, Rome sleeps in layers. The loudest noises now are the soft ones, the rhythmic hush of wind moving through hanging laundry, the tiny trickle of water from a cracked fountain below your window, and the barely there creak of someone 2 floors up turning in their bed. You lie still, staring at the ceiling. You've come a long way in a very short time. From panic in a bathhouse to dreams interpreted on a hill, from barley bread and vinegar water to laughter in a tavern, from being the stranger everyone stared at to the tired regular who gets handed chickpeas without asking. Today you decide you'll walk the long road south toward the Appian Way, just to see what it feels like to leave the city and come back again. You set out after first light, passing the same neighbors you once tiptoed past like a burglar. The baker nods. The goat no longer hisses. The child selling figs gives you one for free, only slightly overripe. Soon the buildings thin out. Temples give way to fields. Marble columns shrink into mile markers. And finally, you reach it. Via Appia, Rome's highway to everywhere. Mainstream historical fact: The Appian Way, Via Appia Antiqua, was one of the earliest and most important Roman roads, dubbed the Queen of Roads. Built in 312 BCE, it stretched over 300 miles and was engineered so precisely that much of its stonework still survives. Military supplies, travelers, and ideas moved along its flat, reliable surface. It was the spine of empire. You walk, at first with purpose. Then, more slowly. The stones are uneven, worn by centuries of sandals and wheels. Cypress trees line the road, tall and stately, casting their long shadows like hour marks on the path. The air is cleaner here, still dusty, but perfumed with something faintly floral. Maybe wild thyme, maybe just someone's well-tended garden further up. You pass tombs, stone markers, shrines, even a few crumbled statues of lions and long-forgotten generals. Rome's roads were flanked by burial monuments, a city of the dead greeting those who traveled beyond the living. There's a serenity to it. Quirky tidbit: Romans preferred to bury their dead outside the city walls, along roads, so the spirits could be close to the living, and so their monuments would be seen by all who passed. Some tombs featured inscriptions speaking directly to strangers. "Stop, traveler. Know that I lived and loved and mattered." You stop at one such stone. There's no name anymore, just a cracked relief of two hands shaking and a faded line. "Veil, farewell." You sit beside it. Drink the last of your water and think. Historians still argue whether Romans saw death as an ending or a transformation. Their rituals were elaborate, yes, but their humor never faded. Grave inscriptions joked, pleaded, advised, and even taunted the living. Death was another role in the great Roman performance. You lie back on the grass beside the road, arms folded behind your head, and watch the clouds drift over the city you've temporarily left behind. From here, the skyline is gentle. No shouting. No vendors, no flaming carts of surprise, just towers softened by distance. It feels like the Rome of myth, the Rome people imagine before they see it, the one where Virgil's Aeneas still wanders, where gods disguise themselves as farmers, where statues whisper, if you know how to listen. You don't stay long, because Rome, despite all its trials, has become yours. You rise. Brush yourself off, turn back toward the city. It greets you again, not with fanfare, but with familiarity. The same stone, same smoke, same goat, same innkeeper yelling at pigeons, same boy dropping a jar of olives and pretending he didn't. But now it's different. Because now, you know it, and it knows you. By the time you step through the city gates again, the sun hangs low and golden, coating everything in honey-colored light. Rome is back in motion, faster than morning, but slower than midday. The hour where workers drift home, where families gather around hearths, and where the city's clamor feels just a little more human. Your sandals slap against the stones like they belong here now, not loud, not hesitant. Just part of the rhythm. You pass through familiar streets. The fruit stall with the bruised apricots. The alley with the mural of Hercules badly in need of a repaint. The woman who still talks to her pigeons as if they owe her money. They probably do. And then your feet carry you, almost without thinking, to a place you hadn't planned on revisiting, the Forum. Earlier in your trip, the Forum overwhelmed you. It was crowded, dizzying, and loud in every language you didn't understand. But now, you arrive at its edge and find something else entirely, not silence, but reverence. Because the Forum, in this hour, glows. The colonnades cast long shadows. Marble steps cool under bare feet. Statues catch the last of the sunlight, their faces lit like ancient saints, smirking and smug. You step among them slowly, a visitor not to power, but to memory. Mainstream historical fact. The Roman Forum was the political, religious, and economic heart of the city, home to temples, marketplaces, courts, and speeches. It was where emperors were crowned, where bodies lay in state, where law was argued, and where gossip traveled faster than any chariot. But it wasn't always so grand. It started as a swamp. Drained, paved, rebuilt again and again. Like Rome itself, you walk past the Temple of Saturn, its columns tall and proud, past the rostra, where Cicero once gave speeches, and where someone is now arguing loudly about grain taxes and how figs are definitely too expensive this year. You smile. Further on, you find a quiet corner, a half-collapsed platform, grass pushing up between the stones, and there, a boy sits sketching, tongue stuck out in concentration, charcoal smudged on his nose. You sit nearby. Not to disturb, just to rest. And slowly, he inches his drawing toward you. He's drawn the forum, lopsided, a bit crooked, full of heart. He shrugs. "It's not right," he says. "It's real," you answer. He smiles, folds the paper, hands it to you. You don't know his name. He doesn't know yours. But here, in the heart of an empire, you share a moment of quiet recognition. Quirky tidbit. The forum wasn't just for the elite. It was where barbers set up stools, where teachers drilled students in poetry, where parents lost their children and then found them again, usually next to a sausage vendor. It was daily life, carved in stone and spilled across centuries. You rise, thank the boy, continue walking. As night begins to fall, the torches are lit. The forum changes again, not majestic, but intimate. You can almost hear the ghosts. Some laugh, some whisper warnings, some offer recipes for roast dormice. Historians still debate what daily life in the forum really felt like. How much was ritual? How much was routine? How often did people stop, breathe, and simply look around? You don't need the answer, because you're doing it now. Looking, breathing, here. Not as a tourist, not as a scholar, just as someone who's lived through the forum's pigeons, parades, heat, and heart. And that, somehow, feels enough. You walk the long road back to your room one last time. Lanterns sway above your head. Shadows stretch long and slow. The city exhales. And so do you. Your final morning in Rome arrives gently. No alarms, no shouts. Just the soft clatter of a broom sweeping the courtyard below and the faint rustle of laundry catching the breeze. The olive oil lamp has gone out, but the sun, pale and gold, is already pouring through the shutters like a soft farewell. You lie still for a moment. Your bag is packed, not with much. Your wooden coin, the fig stone, the folded drawing from the boy in the forum. Nothing valuable. Nothing grand, but everything important. You stretch slowly, savoring the way your limbs complain with familiarity rather than shock. There are bruises you can't explain, smells you've grown oddly fond of, and a soot stain on your cloak that may be older than the empire itself. You rise, splash your face, and take one final look around the room. The cracked basin, the lumpy cot, the beam overhead where a pigeon once glared at you like a disappointed senator. You nod to all of it. Then you head out quietly. No fanfare, just the worn rhythm of sandals on stone. You make your way toward the edge of the city, not to escape it, but to mark the transition. One final walk. One final look back. You pass familiar faces. The fruit vendor's apprentice, now slightly taller. The tavern singer, humming a tune you think you recognize. Even the goat, which finally allows you a nod of distant respect. You pass a new mural, bright, strange, beautiful. A boy has added your cloak to the crowd of painted Romans. You're part of the city now, whether you ask to be or not. Mainstream historical fact. Most visitors to Rome, merchants, diplomats, pilgrims, rarely stayed long. But their impact lingered. Ideas, phrases, habits. Rome absorbed everything. The city was an open mouth, always speaking, always listening. And those who left never did so completely. You reach the Porta Capena, once the southern gateway to the city. It's quieter here. Less traffic, more sky. You pause just beneath the arch, hands at your sides, eyes forward. And you breathe. You made it. You didn't topple the empire. You didn't get arrested. You didn't even eat the oysters. You simply walked, listened, laughed, stumbled, rested, and kept going. Historians still argue about what life was really like in ancient Rome. You could tell them a few things, like how the bread is terrible, but the laughter is free. How the marble is cold, but the people are warm. How sometimes surviving one day in Rome is worth 1,000 speeches carved in stone. You turn, just briefly, and look back once more. The city doesn't wave, it doesn't shout, it just is. Timeless, cracked, glorious. Human. And then you walk on. Because even if you're leaving Rome, Rome never really leaves you. And now, as you settle into your pillow and let the last echoes of Rome fade softly behind your eyes, let yourself drift slower, softer, gentler. Imagine the marble turning warm beneath moonlight, the footsteps quieting in the forum, the last fig seller packing up his cart, humming something tuneless and sweet. The fire in the bathhouse dies down to a flicker. The temples rest, the pigeons finally stop arguing. The whole city leans back, just for a moment, and exhales. You're no longer climbing hills or dodging carts or bargaining over vinegar-soaked greens. There are no parades, no politics, no sudden trumpet calls, only breath and stillness, and the quiet rhythm of memory pressing into sleep. Let your shoulders sink deeper into your mattress, your hands loose, your jaw soft. You've walked the Appian Way, eaten barley bread by torchlight, been serenaded by flutes and mimes, and watched strangers become something close to kin. You've lived in Rome, not in legend, but in its dust, its warmth, its barely holding it together beauty. And now it's time to leave it behind, just for the night. Let the olive trees sway in your dreams. Let the wooden coins spin slowly in your mind's palm. Let the goat rest too. The world is quiet now. You are safe. You are still. And Rome, in all its impossible chaos and grace, will be waiting whenever you return, whether in thought, in dreams, or in stories, whispered just before sleep. Good night. And as the Romans said, veil, farewell, and may the road rise gently beneath your feet. Sweet dreams.